Okay, we're coming back now to re-adjourn the meeting. This is the council meeting, and for those of you who weren't not with us earlier, we needed to have an official swearing in of our two new council members, although we will be having the ceremony next week for the installation of the new council members. So the official ceremonial installation is next Tuesday, the 18th, as was scheduled, but the Registrar of Voters certified the election earlier, so we needed to seat our two new council members. So we want to welcome Councilmember Karen Hardy here to my right, and then Councilmember Raj Chahal over here to the left. So this is their first official council meeting, and then next week we'll be able to celebrate their elections with their families as well. So the first item of business is we have reports taken of action in closed session. Any closed session action items taken, City Attorney?
There was no reportable action taken at closed session.
Okay, thank you. Next is continuances and exceptions. Is there any from the council, staff, public? All right, seeing none, then it's my pleasure to go on to our first special order of business. And the first we have is recognition of City of Santa Clara employee Lindsay Maybach. Am I saying it right? Maybach. Thank you. Thank you. I want to make sure I get it right. For receiving an international award for her work supporting the law enforcement torch run for Special Olympics. So I want to talk a little bit about Lindsay, and then I'm going to ask Assistant Chief Dan Winter to come forward and say some words about her as well. So for tonight's special order of business, Lindsay has been working for the city clerk's office since 2002. She performs various administrative tasks and is the heart of the city clerk team. Lindsay has been a Special Olympics athlete for over 27 years. In 2002, she was honored as Special Olympian of the Year by the San Jose Sports Hall of Fame. She is a multi-sport athlete. Her favorite sports are swimming and floor hockey. She's an active volunteer, a public speaker, and annual torch runner. The Special Olympics family is her family, both figuratively and literally, as she met her husband, Ryan, through competing together here in Northern California. Wow. Love story. Nice, nice. Lindsay is an eager volunteer with Tipacops and many other law enforcement torch run fundraisers throughout the year. She believes strongly in giving back and helping to support athletes like herself become the best they can be through Special Olympics. At this time, I would like to invite Assistant Chief Dan Winter forward to tell us a little bit more about Lindsay, and if Lindsay could come forward as well.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, for giving me a minute or two to talk about one of my favorite people in the world, and that is Lindsay. First of all, it gives me tremendous pride to say that Lindsay is my coworker here at the City of Santa Clara. And I know that many of her coworkers from City Clerk's office showed up tonight to be here to celebrate her work here. And I have that pride because one of the goals of Special Olympics is to build an inclusive society where everyone is respected for their unique talents and abilities. And I'm proud to say that Santa Clara is at the forefront of creating that inclusive society. Thanks to her job here at the City of Santa Clara, Lindsay is able to have her own apartment and live with her husband, Ryan. As many of you know, the Santa Clara Police Department is usually the #1 law enforcement fundraiser for Special Olympics in Northern California. Personnel from the department raise money in all sorts of ways. We wait on tables at Tipacops, we sell t-shirts, we run down El Camino Real in the heat of summer, we polar plunge into the cold waters of the Bay and Lake Tahoe to raise funds for the athletes of Special Olympics, and Lindsay is here with us every step of the way. That is one of the reasons that she received this international award. The Santa Clara Police Department raises about $70,000 a year for Special Olympics, and collectively law enforcement throughout Northern California raises over $1 million a year. Lindsay is a fighter for Special Olympics and those with intellectual disabilities. Together with her mom, Joan, who's here tonight as well, they travel to Sacramento, to Washington, D.C. She just told me they're going back to Washington, D.C. in February to lobby on behalf of Special Olympics and those with intellectual disabilities. They are a terrific pair. I was present when Lindsay received this award on November 9th in front of about 1,000 law enforcement officers from around the world at the international conference. And she received that standing ovation when she received the award. The inscription on the plaque reads, "In honor of your outstanding contributions to the law enforcement torch run and Special Olympics in spirit, dedication, and enthusiasm in both an effective and unheralded fashion, your unwavering commitment to others has been recognized by the International Law Enforcement Torch Run Executive Council." I'm so thankful that she received that recognition there, and I'm thankful that she's able to receive that recognition here at home from you folks. So thank you very much for leading this inclusive city and for recognizing Lindsay tonight. And I think Lindsay has a few words for you.
Right. Thank you. And we have something for her as well.
Perfect.
Hi.
First of all, I want to say congratulations to the two new people, and that I couldn't have this award from the law enforcement torch run. My family, my friends, my husband, and especially my coworkers and ex-coworkers too. Thank you so much for letting me come tonight. It's my first time here, and thank you for the opportunity. Love you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you. So now on behalf of the Santa Clara City Council, we want to thank you for your many years of service to the city, and we'd like to present you with a city proclamation to thank you for all of your help, and we are so incredibly proud of you. We are proud that you are working here. We're bragging about you all over the place. And we're just you're such an amazing woman. And we just want to be able to honor you with this special proclamation. So, and thank you, Assistant Chief Dan Winter, for all that you do and the department does for Special Olympics. I know a lot of us have been to a lot of your events. And we are honored to support you and everything that you do on behalf of Special Olympics. So Lindsay, if you'd like to come forward here, and the council, if you could please join me down here. Assistant Chief, if you'd like to come forward. Chief, family members, please come forward and we'll... Oh, and the city clerk employees, please all come. We have to honor this woman.
Yeah, you just leave it here. Hopefully it won't. We can get you. One, two, three. And we'll do one more.
Congratulations.
Congratulations to you.
Okay, that's a hard act to follow. Yeah, sure is. Yep, yep. Okay, so next we have the recognition of Air Products Foundation for a $5,000 donation to support the city's Community Emergency Response Team program, also known as CERT. So here tonight we have our Fire Chief, Bill Kelly. Welcome, Chief Kelly.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Gilmore, members of the council. I'm pleased to be joined tonight by Michael Chow and Ian Anderson representing the Air Products Foundation. I asked them to please come forward. I'm glad they're here tonight because we get to publicly thank them for a donation of $5,000. The donation supports our CERT program, which is designed to help our citizens be self-sufficient after a major disaster when the scope of incidents can be overwhelming and the need for a well-trained civilian workforce can be invaluable. A major earthquake, for example, in the city of Santa Clara can cause major damage to homes, roads, and other structures. Electricity, gas, water, and phone service may be interrupted. Local resources will be overtaxed with hundreds of emergency calls. CERT volunteers can help with recovery efforts in their neighborhoods and in their businesses. And students during six 3-hour classes will learn some very basic skills, but important skills, such as search and rescue, some basic firefighting, basic medical aid, how to shut utilities off in their neighborhood, skills like that that can be very valuable. Since the CERT program began in 1995, over 1,500 participants have learned about the city's emergency organization and have received the 20-hour training. This year alone, we have trained 75 new CERT volunteers and provided ongoing training to over 300 program graduates. Lisa Schoenthal, our emergency services coordinator, has trained those folks, and she's here in the audience today as well. Our volunteers are located throughout the city and are an integral part of our city's emergency response efforts. I encourage our fellow citizens to become CERT volunteers, and for more information, they can visit our city's website to find out how to do that. This generous donation from Air Products Foundation will provide 150 kits of personal protective equipment for our CERT graduates, and that's going to enhance their ability to help their neighbors in time of need. And for that, we're very grateful. I ask Ian Anderson to say a few comments. Thanks for being here.
Yeah,
Welcome.
thank you. And I just wanted to say on behalf of Air Products, we're very happy to be able to present this donation to support the CERT program and the Santa Clara Fire Department. We look forward to continue work with the fire department and supporting them and the surrounding Santa Clara community. This program really aligns with the Air Products philosophy of health, safety, and the environment first, and we're really glad to support this and be able to be a part of it. So I want to say thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for your generous donation. It's going to help so many community members, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you. Mayor Gilmore, if I can ask you to help present this certificate from the city or this letter of appreciation.
Great, and maybe they can come forward. We can present that and take a photo with the rest of the council up here too. Is that okay?
That would be
you,
great.
Chief, as well?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa? Yeah, Lisa Schoenthal, ask her to.
Us back there. Eight. One. Oops. 2, 3, and one more.
It's wonderful to have businesses support our city like that. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, next, we have a very bittersweet special order of business, but it's recognition of John C. Rockema, our Chief Electric Utility Officer. So as a special order of business this evening, the City Council would like to recognize John C. Rockema, Chief Electric Utility Officer for the city's electric utility, Silicon Valley Power, known as SVP, who will be retiring at the end of this year. Since joining the city in 1980 as a senior electric utility engineer, John has advanced to an electric division manager, assistant director of electric utility, and then promoted to director of electric utility, chief electric utility officer, which he remains in until his retirement. Throughout his career at SVP, John has been directly responsible for each of the organizational areas in the utility, including customer service, planning, resource acquisition, engineering, operation, and construction. That's everything, I think, in the electric utility you've been involved in. John has positively impacted the electric utility industry by holding key roles in the Transmission Agency of Northern California, APPA, California Independent Systems Operator, and Northern California Power Agency, NCPA. He has helped shape SVP to be known for its high reliability, high customer satisfaction, and its competitive rates. Under John's leadership, SVP has earned numerous awards, including but not limited to the 2018 Award of Continued Excellence from the American Public Power Association, APPA, the 2017 Resource Efficiency and Community Service Award from the California Municipal Utilities Association, 2014 United States Department of Energy Public Power Wind Award. After 38 years of dedicated service to the city of Santa Clara, John is retiring. I see his wife smiling next to him. At this time, I'd like to invite John up to the podium to speak and say a few words to us.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate this. It's a real honor to be recognized like this. I do have a 50 slide PowerPoint presentation. No, I guess not.
You don't. We show that at your retirement party. We can show that, okay?
That's right. That's right. And I really do want to let you know how much I appreciate the support, not only personally from the City Council, but also the support for the department through all these years. And it's really, it hasn't been me as much as it has been the staff of SVP. And they're such an amazing group. For all 38 years I've been here, it's been an amazing group to work with, and the staff we have now. Their focus on customer service and taking care of our citizens and our customers is really truly amazing. I'd also like to thank my wife, who put up with this for 38 years and calls in the middle of the night and traveling and all the rest. So I was going to stay here 2 years, and then I was going to go decide what I wanted to do in my career when I came here from PG&E. And there's always been something new, something interesting, something challenging, and just amazing new challenges all the time. But that's Santa Clara. So thank you very much. I really appreciate this honor.
We want to give you a proclamation on behalf of the city of Santa Clara. I was going to ask Councilmember O'Neill if she wanted to say something, because she has been involved with the electric utility and on our committees for the past couple of years. So
I'm going to miss John very much. I mean, John's a very quiet person. He's another one of these, people who are quiet, but that you listen to them because you have so much respect for what they have to say. And John's had a lot of patience with me in trying to help me understand a lot of the unique aspects of the electric utility business and to understand the culture and really to see how dedicated the employees are and how dedicated John has been. And also when I've gone with him to meetings at NCPA or APPA, I can always see that John is very respected by his peers, whether it's here in Northern California or across the country. People, talk about John Rockema, and, you look at the list of task forces and committees and bodies and things like that that John has been asked to serve on, and it's because his intelligence and his insight and his just knowledge of the industry is apparent to people who spend any time working with him. And he's also a very gracious person and has a very quiet sense of humor. And he's, fun to go places when we had to go on some of these trips. He's always very accommodating, and he's always just been a wonderful ambassador for the city of Santa Clara. And so I will miss him tremendously. And I know that other people, I know people throughout Northern California are like, well, John's not going to retire, is he? He's going to stay a few more years, isn't he? So we were hoping. But, I mean, we can only be so greedy, and now we have to let him go off and enjoy his new truck. It seems like directors in Santa Clara, when they're getting ready to retire, they buy these humongous, truck vehicles, because I guess they need...
Prius replacement.
Yeah.
Is it electric powered?
No, this is not an electric powered truck. I had the pleasure of riding in it. Yeah, I love it when he said this is the Prius replacement. But so we will... we will miss him tremendously, and maybe we can go up and visit him in Tahoe.
All of us.
Right?
And ride around in the Prius replacement.
That's right.
Well, thank you, Councilmember O'Neill. I know that you have continuously told us how, since you're spending a lot of time with SVP and with John and with all the agencies that we're involved in, that she has always come back and said, our director is so, well loved and respected, throughout the United States. You've been so humble, really, as to all that you have accomplished for us, and you've been the face of Silicon Valley Power, and Silicon Valley Power is so well respected. And so I know our community is so grateful for Silicon Valley Power, especially how very few times the lights go out. And when they do, there's a lot of communication and they're on as quickly as possible. So unlike that other utility next door, Silicon Valley Power has been fabulous for Santa Clara. And I know you also give your employees a lot of credit because that's the kind of leader and director that you are. But you also deserve a lot of credit. And I know your retirement party is next week, and we'll be attending, so we can talk more in detail about you, very good detail about you. But today, we would like to present you on behalf of the City Council with this proclamation for your years of service to Santa Clara and honor you for all the good work that you've done for us. So if you'd like to join us up here and
we have to give you standing O.
I'll do this first. Yeah.
right, next we have the consent calendar, and all items are approved with one motion. Is there anyone that would like to pull, anyone on the council that would like to pull any items from the consent calendar? See none. Staff, any items? Any member of the public like to pull an item from the consent calendar? Okay, seeing none.
Motion to approve consent calendar.
There's a motion.
Second.
And a second to approve the consent calendar. Please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, we have public presentations. Any member of the public like to speak? Please come forward. Do we have any cards? No cards. Okay, seeing no public presentations. Moving on, consent items pulled for discussion. We have none. Next, we have a public hearing. Our first item is update and potential action on Lawn Bowl Clubhouse project. Assistant City Manager.
Yes, thank you,
Manuel.
Mayor. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Manuel Pineda, Assistant City Manager. Pleasure to be here tonight to do our follow-up meeting on the Lawn Bowls Clubhouse refurbishment project. With me tonight is also our Parks and Rec Director, Jim Teixeira, and Principal Engineer from the Department of Public Works, Ali Hood, who will be doing part of the presentation. So to start out, we'll do some of the background. I know we did this when we were with you in October, but it's important to just go over some of the few key items. So in June of 2018, City Council allocated $175,000 to refurbish the existing clubhouse. And you can see the picture on the right. It's a modular building. And the $175,000 was intended to enhance and correct some of the bones of the structure, such as the HVAC and a few other things, as well as some of the aesthetic improvements, including paint, carpet, and a few other elements. In July of 2018, we got a request from the Lawn Bowls Club. The Lawn Bowls Club has 39 members, including 20 Santa Clara residents, and they are the primary user of the Lawn Bowls facility. And their request was to not proceed with the refurbishment, but go back and look at the design that was developed in 2004 to actually build a new permanent structure at that facility. Back in 2004, the city designed a approximately 2,200 square foot building, and although the project was bid out, the project bid came at a much higher price than what was available at the time, and the design did not go forward. So on October 9th, we came to council and presented 5 different alternatives for you to consider. We'll go over those briefly. So at the October 9th council meeting, we of course presented to you the funded alternative, which was to take the $175,000 and refurbish the existing modular building. In addition to that, we looked at 4 unfunded alternatives for your consideration. And it's important to note that as part of that, any alternative that was going to put a new building, whether it's modular or permanent, that building was going to be relocated to the east end of the facility. And because that aligned with the Central Park master plan that we're currently working on, which anticipates that that building would be relocated. So we wanted to take that into consideration. So the other 4 alternatives consider, of course, the new larger facility that we discussed, a $2 million project based on where engineering bids are at today. We also looked at 2 modular options, one for $566,000, and that one's a little more aesthetically enhanced than what you saw in the picture. It has a better aesthetic element than a typical modular building. And another for $600,000 that also had aesthetic enhancements, but also added a bathroom in a kitchen. The final option that we proposed for council consideration was to actually defer the project to the 2020-21 CIP process so the council could consider how this project fit within all other city priorities. At that council meeting, there was one additional alternative that staff discussed during the question and comment section of the presentation, And that was actually looking at replacing the existing modular with one in-kind, meaning exactly or very similar to what we have out there today for the same $175,000 approved budget. There was some concern during that discussion that that was really not feasible because we had not fully analyzed that alternative. And ultimately, what the council motion asked us to do was to really go back and study that. And we also went back and refined what we had looked at before and bring back more information on any modular alternatives. And that's really what we have for you today. We have 3 alternatives for your consideration. We, of course, are keeping alternative 1, which is to refurbish with the $175,000 that we have, and that's the funded project. We looked at that new alternative that was introduced at the council meeting, which was to replace in-kind with a similar modular to what's out there today. And I can tell you that we cannot complete that project with the same $175,000 budget. It will be more than that. And then we looked at alternative 3, which was an enhanced aesthetic modular building that also included a bathroom and kitchenette. And with that, I'll pass it over to Ali to go over some additional details.
Great, thank you, Memo.
Thank you, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for having me. My name is Ali Hood. I'm a principal engineer in the Public Works Department, and I'll continue with the presentation. So as Manuel mentioned, we do have some alternatives for consideration. In both instances, they would move the new modular to the east end of the Lawn Bowl Green per the draft master plan. We have since refined our conceptual estimates. We now include all design and permitting costs as well as construction costs. Some of those construction costs include site preparation, demolition and removal of the existing trailer, and additional contingencies as needed. So the 2 new alternatives that we're bringing to council's consideration today is alternative number 2, which is to replace in-kind. This is, again, a similar modular in size and aesthetic to what's currently out there. It would not include a bathroom or a kitchenette, and it's estimated at $420,000. You'll see on the top right-hand corner there a picture of something similar in size and aesthetic as what's currently on site. Alternative number 3, which is our enhanced modular, includes architectural improvements, enhanced aesthetics, a bathroom and a kitchenette, and that is estimated at $530,000. Now, that's a sample representative photo there on the bottom right-hand corner. It's important to note that what's actually installed, if council does provide that direction, may vary from what's shown here. These are also conceptual estimates only, and we will not be able to tell you the exact figures until after the full design and bid of the project is completed. So a quick summary for project costs and funding. As Manuel has mentioned, we have $175,000 in current funding, so alternative 1 is fully funded. For alternative 2, which is our replace in-kind option, we would require an additional $245,000. And then finally, for alternative 3, which is our enhanced option with a kitchenette and bathroom, we would require an additional $355,000. We've also developed some possible cost savings that are listed below, and that's for council's consideration to potentially mix and match. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Manuel.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. So as staff look at their recommendation as we move forward with the project, we wanted to look at other priorities and how those fit within the needs that we have as it relates to park. As you remember, approximately 3-4 months ago, we came to council with 2 presentations. One was for general infrastructure for the city, and one was for infrastructure related to parks that we called the Kitchell report. And in that report, there were at about $150 million worth of projects of things we're going to have to do over the long term. In the near term, there are some list of projects that are currently unfunded that we know we're going to have to identify funding for. It does include projects like the park upgrades at our Reed and Grant Park. That's a project we want to get done now as we complete the sports field project out there. We also have some playground renovations that are unfunded, approximately 10 of them, and the cost for those will be around $7.5 million. Our international swim center shower repairs, as you know, we had some issues with those shower repairs. We're currently working on it. We haven't finalized what the ultimate solution will be for that, but we do know we'll be in the millions of dollars, and that's currently unfunded as well as a number of other projects. If you look at the Kitchell report, just on Central Park by itself, there's about $25 million worth of needs that we currently don't have funding for. So with all that context in mind, we understand the overall needs. At the same time, we do also understand that the Lawn Bowls Clubhouse could use some improvements to make sure that it continues to operate. We're recommending alternative one, continue with the current approved renovation of the existing clubhouse with the amount of the funded project at $175,000. That concludes staff presentation and of course available for comments and questions.
Is there questions from the council on the report? Councilmember O'Neill?
Or questions, comments. So, and I see the representative from the Lawn Bowling Club is here to, so maybe he can, I'm sure he'll want to make some comments.
Speaking, yes.
So when we looked at this, in terms of like, when you look at the facilities that are there at Central Park, and I'm thinking, if they need, we just heard the showers at the swim center are not very good condition. If the thought was that they need a changing facility, because I was kind of thinking what was the real driver behind the clubhouse, if it was like, to have a changing room or to have a restroom or that, like, could we incorporate that in the planning of what maybe is going to happen with the swim center so that maybe, we can leverage leverage a facility to make it used for more ways. Or another thought that occurred to me. I'm trying to think instead of, because it's still a relatively small group of users to have like a dedicated facility, or like before I mentioned, like either at Fremont Park or say the new sports park over on Reed and Grant. Is there space there that there could be a lawn bowling near, and there's going to be a community room? Because that's what I'm trying to think. Is there some place where we already are either have a facility or could put a small amount of money or incorporate into a facility that is funded to meet the needs, as I said, whether it's to have a changing facility or a restroom available, as opposed, because when particularly when, we're reminded of the incredible numbers of projects that we have that are non-funded, and particularly when we looked at the list that was in the council agenda report, so I'm a little leery about going beyond anything other than what has already been committed. But like I said, the thought of, is there a way to leverage something else to provide perhaps better access to a more, a more complete facility, if that's what the need really is.
I would recommend, if there is an interest from the council, for us to look at, as we look at the Central Park Master Plan, of looking at a facility that's not just specific to one user, but can be used at multiple users. We can certainly take that back and incorporate that into the master plan. Our understanding from our conversations, and Jim and I have spoken separately to the Lawn Bowls clubhouse folks, is that they would like to have a facility that's specific to the clubhouse. I think relocating to a different location it could be problematic, because at that point you would have to rebuild the lawn bowl turf itself. But certainly, looking at a facility that can be used not just for one user, but multiple users, could be looked at in context of the master plan that we're currently working on.
Okay, thank you.
The only issue is that to the extent that the master plan amenity or structure isn't funded, it does not resolve the funding issue where you're pointing out in terms of leveraging the opportunity to combine the funds and build out something for multiple uses.
Thank you. Councilmember Hardy?
Maybe it's good or bad that I have a long memory, but when I was on the Planning Commission, and this came up way 15 years ago or so, when we did the senior center, I made the suggestion that that was maybe a better park for that to be in, and that the facilities there in the new senior center could be utilized that way. And I got told that, how dare you suggest that people in lawn bowling were seniors. I wasn't making assumptions. I was thinking of parks that had more space and had facilities that were open longer hours and had facilities that they needed. And I'm just thinking, maybe I was right.
I think that it was actually brought up at our meeting in October about, we talked about potentially moving lawn bowls somewhere else, and the senior center was brought up as an option. I think that, Manuel, you talked about the cost to move the actual lawn bowls is probably pretty significant itself. You think it's just grass, but it's more than that. So do we have any idea on the cost of moving lawn bowls?
No, we have not done a cost estimate on the actual moving the lawn bowls themselves. I mean, it would be a couple of things related to it, right? One would be finding the right area where you
Right.
could put it, and what would you replace that's currently at that location. And two, the actual cost of the turf itself and everything else related to it. Kind of from our perspective, I think I mentioned that there's at least $25 million worth of needs at Central Park right now that are unfunded, and that's not counting the swim center, which we had,
Yeah.
larger
Wow.
conversations about.
Yeah.
So the $175,000 allows to continue to use the current modular while you kind of go through a long-term process to determine where the priorities are at, where future funds will be spent. Certainly, if the council had an interest in relocating the turf itself, that's something we would have to look at as part of a separate project. It's not something we have explored.
Yeah, but Councilmember Hardy, it was brought up just in October, that particular location. Okay, any other member of the council, question or comment at this point? If not, I'm going to go to Mr. Jerry Padrignani. If you'd like to come forward, please, as a representative of the Lawn Bowls Club. Welcome,
Thank you.
sir.
Y'all got a picture of, yeah.
Yes, we all have that, yes.
The one thing
we do.
that demonstrates, which I didn't think was going to be necessary, so I didn't really come prepared for all of the different sidebars that we have on this situation, is none of what I've seen up here has the aesthetics that fit in with lawn bowling. Lawn bowling has a long tradition, thousands of years, in fact. What do I have, 3 minutes?
No, I'd say go ahead. Let's just make your
Okay.
presentation since you're representing the group.
So I definitely don't approve of the buildings that were shown up here. They look like houses. They don't seem to belong in a public park to begin with. They're just, just not right. So I'll just start in with what I wrote down.
Okay.
Okay, I'm Jerry Patrignani, Vice President and spokesperson for the Santa Clara Lawn Bowl Club. The club members would like to say thank you to this council as well as the councils in the past for having provided the city of Santa Clara this wonderful lawn bowls facility. I'm here requesting that a promise made in 2003 and 2008 to replace a demolished clubhouse be replaced and to ask that no money be spent on the trailer we now have. The old clubhouse was removed because it was in the way of the remodeling of the Central Park Library. The promise was made to build a bigger and better clubhouse, but circumstances has caused that not to happen. I'm sure the intention was to replace the clubhouse, but it hasn't happened in 15 years. Yes, we have a trailer that we call laughingly the box car because that's what it looks like, and I don't mean no disrespect in saying that. You have you have the two pictures, one picture of the current clubhouse and one picture of a lawn bowl clubhouse. And you can see the character in the better picture, of course, than the one that's there. And I gleaned this picture from a movie, and I hope it's not against the law. I don't know. I also have been to England where the clubhouse is. The city of Santa Clara has a fine bowling rink, but it lacks an attention getter. These would not be a good attention getter. They might be an attention getter, but the appearance of those buildings just doesn't have the class. So this is the problem. Some of you are not inclined to spend the necessary funds to build a clubhouse for so few people. By the way, that's 50, not 31 or 39 or what you seem to think it is, members. Uh, And I'm saying we don't then, boy, there's, oh, let me read that sentence over again. Some of you are not inclined to spend the necessary funds to build a clubhouse for so few people. And I'm saying if we don't, then there's no reason to expect growth. We had over 100 members when we had an attractive clubhouse. I spoke with Mr. Texera yesterday and offered the club's assistance in obligating ourselves in completing the kitchen and bathroom given. I'm going to break away from what I wrote here for a minute. The original plans was for 2,200 square feet. That's way more than what we really need. It also calls for 2 bathrooms. We don't need 2 bathrooms. 1 bathroom is plenty. It calls for a kind of an expensively done island type of kitchen. We don't need that. We can build it up against the wall a lot cheaper than that. Okay, so that was ad-lib, that part. Yeah. Well, let's talk about spending money on renovating the trailer we use for a clubhouse. This clubhouse will never be renovated so as to attract attention because of its shape. It's obvious it will always be more economical to replace it than to change it, its shape. The club needs an attraction to grow, one that complements the park and the city of Santa Clara, to be proud of it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I had a couple questions for the 175,000. What was going to be done to the trailer? And is it possible to add a kitchenette and a bathroom and make the outside look better for 175,000?
Let me start with the second part. So
Okay.
no, we cannot add a kitchenette and bathroom and change the aesthetics to a significant degree for $175,000. The $175,000 is really going to correct some of the basics. We're looking at the HVAC system. We're looking at some structural things that we want to correct on the subfloors. Certainly some aesthetics like paint and flooring could be done, but it would not be a significant change. I think for a modular building, once you're getting to trying to retrofit a bathroom or a kitchen or trying to change the outside aesthetic look of it, really the most cost-effective way to do it would be to go buy a new modular facility. So this would get you fixing some of the bones of the facility and then just do some of the aesthetics like paints and flooring, some of the basic stuff.
I know this is a little outside the box, but have we talked to anyone about maybe donating a modular, like a school district that has an extra modular or something, you know? I know this apparently was like a construction trailer originally.
Yeah, we have not explored that donation of a modular. I think most of the modulars that I've seen, at school locations and other ones, they have similar aesthetic in that they are somewhat plain, but we haven't explored any donations of an older modular that would replace the existing one that we have. I would say that once you look at that donation, there would still be some costs associated with the age of that modular and transferring that and removing the existing one, but we haven't explored it.
So does the 175,000 keep the modular where it is now, or does it move it?
Keeps it where it is.
Keeps
So
it
we're
where
just
it is?
refurbishing on-site.
On-site?
Where it's at, that's correct.
Okay. Any other council members? Councilmember Hardy?
I'm wondering if the club has done any fundraising or looked for grants themselves.
Mr. Pagranani, do you?
I wonder if the club has done any fundraising or looked for any grants themselves.
If you could come to the microphone, if you wouldn't mind, please. Thank you.
No, we have not, because this idea of getting the clubhouse actually was a dead subject well before I became a member of this club, and nobody was talking about it. So I've since started the ball rolling, and I know we'll have a new clubhouse someday. And right now we're at the bottom of the ladder, but we will get a clubhouse, and it will look more like the picture that I showed you rather than the pictures you've showed me. It's just an unacceptable thing to do. And what was did I answer your question or not?
Well, I asked if you had looked for grants or if
No.
done any fundraising yourselves.
No, not at this time, because we didn't know where we stood with the city, really, as far as getting, what part was our part that we could do. So we're just sort of learning this now. But we would gladly look around, certainly. I thought the city has a better idea of how to get grants and things of this nature. And I know there's grants out there. People with all kinds of money that looking to get their name on a building or something for $500,000. But I think that for about $500,000, we can cut down the size of the clubhouse. We only need about 1,000 square feet. It should be 20 by 50. The one we're in now is 60 feet long and 13 feet wide. And once you put a table in there, two people can't pass around the table till one gives up their space so the other person can get by. And the handicap ramp out front has denied people to walk by each other out in front of that ramp, and they have to actually go onto the grass to get around. So everything about this house or trailer, boxcar, whatever you want to call it, it's just not right. A building like I'm suggesting would bring even more people into the park because it's something to look at. It's something that's beautiful. It's something that's more traditional with lawn bowling. I'll stay here till you tell me to go home.
Councilmember Hardy, any more questions? All right. Any other member of the council questions? Councilmember Chahal?
This question to staff, basically. So the estimates we have right now are like, even for 2,200 square feet, we had estimated $2.2 million, right? And this comes out to be around $1,000 per square feet of construction.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in a planning commission meeting recently, and even for class 1 construction, the amount was coming to around $600 per square feet. So I'm not, I cannot judge like why the construction cost is so high, even for 720 square feet of we are looking at $520,000 K, and that comes out to be another $600 per square feet. So can you convince me about what the cost of construction is so high?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to discuss construction costs. So when the city is doing a project, so what we're looking at, we can no longer use that 2004 design. So, obviously that was done. We have to be updated. So when I'm looking at about $1,000 a square foot, that includes both the construction costs for the project and the redesign and permitting. So when you add that together, that works out to about $1,000. What's difference between the city and private development is the city has certain requirements, state requirements such as prevailing wage, where we have to pay certain costs that private developers don't have to pay. I can't speak for the $600 that a private developer has mentioned at Planning Commission, but I can tell you from past experience and actual bid estimates that getting $800 a square foot for a publicly bid building, it's pretty typical. The last numbers that we looked at when I was looking at a library, those were coming at closer to $1,200 a square foot. So those are not at typical $1,000 at a conceptual level. Really, it's generally what you wouldn't want to use. As you tighten up the design, that might go down a little more, but it's not going to get much lower than that, and especially during this construction period. So we have different requirements that a private development does, so we can compare private development to us. Like I said, prevailing wage being one of the key components associated with that. On the modulars, there's a couple of things. So what we had, and we had Public Works work on this, and Ali was the main person doing the work. We didn't only just look at the cost of the modular building itself, but looked at the cost of all the other elements associated with it. So the modular building is one cost, and for a similar 700 square foot building, not a 1,000 square foot building with limited aesthetic. That worked out to about $120,000, $150,000 just for the building itself. Then on top of that, if you're doing things like kitchens and bathrooms, you have to account for sewer laterals, you have to look for water connections, then you also have to look for electrical connections, so all those utilities that are coming into it. In addition to that, we have to get the permitting and the design plans, and then you have to demolish the existing one and get rid of that. So the cost of the building is one thing, but all the other elements to actually make the building function go on top of that cost. We did look, so what we estimated was a 720 square foot building. We feel at this concept level, our estimates are where they need to be. Once you bid out, it might come in a little higher, it might come in a little lower. We also ran some numbers closer to the 1,000 square foot building that the Lawn Bowls Clubhouse is looking for, and we estimate that would add about $60,000 to $100,000 to our estimates. So it's not just the modular itself, but all the other elements. And we looked at the as-built as well to see where the conflicts were with the utilities, where the utilities are coming from, how far we have to trench to make those connections, and then we applied our typical engineering estimates to come up with our number.
Vice Mayor Watanabe?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a lot of thoughts on this. First, I mean, I appreciate, this is something, you want the city to keep a promise that was made, and it's been a while, and you've been the bowling club has been patiently waiting, but I appreciate Councilmember Hardy's question, about whether or not you've explored any kind of fundraising or grants, because I'll tell you right now, I'm working with a gentleman that wants to develop an electric vehicle park, and the gentleman has found all kinds of grants, and people have just come to him because there's such an interest in it. And so as much as he's looking for actually the county and the local cities to assist, at the same time, he's also going out looking for his own grant money and fundraising, because it's something that's very important to him. So he's being proactive, as well as with several other people that he's working with in trying to get this project developed. So I appreciate that comment. Right now, has been shown. I mean, there are a lot of projects in the pike right now, and it's not to say that lawn bowling isn't important, but there's an opportunity here to at least offer something until 2021. When we come up with a master plan, to be able to say, hey, we can fit this in here. But in the meantime, at least the 50 members of the club have some place to, enjoy lawn bowling until we can come up with something better. And I think something better is better than nothing. And so if I were to make a motion on this, I would make a motion to go with staff recommendation to go with the first one, that the alternative one, which is to just continue to rehab with $175,000 and just continue moving forward. Note and file the report and continue with current approved renovation of the existing clubhouse in the current location in the amount of up to $175,000. That's my motion.
Second.
Motion and a second on the floor. Councilmember O'Neill?
Yes, I wanted the mayor and I were confirming. I mean, we know that some of the school districts have portable buildings that are a little bit bigger. I mean, have we looked at like the opportunity to maybe either get one from, Santa Clara Unified is probably going to be switching out a bunch of stuff, or to piggyback on one of their contracts? I'm just thinking one that wouldn't be quite look like a construction trailer. I mean, if that's one of the objections, if they have some, modulars that, they use for classrooms or offices, I just wondered if that had come up.
No, we have not looked at that option now.
Yeah, they have a model that's about 980 square feet classroom or 2 classrooms. I mean, I think even if this motion does pass, that we can talk to them. We can talk to the school district and see if they have anything. Or the community college district, or to see if there's anything, since they're constantly moving and changing out their relocatables, which are better than what is there now. I see the frustration that what is there now, it's like throwing money into something that needs a lot of work, but yet it's not being able to afford to completely replace, what's there. So, all right, are you finished?
Yeah, I'm finished, yeah.
I wanted to make a friendly amendment.
Yes, Councilmember Hardy.
I would like to make a friendly amendment to the motion that if we encumber these funds, that they could also be seed money if there's fundraising or grants done, that would be set aside to use in a way that is deemed appropriate with the head of Parks and Rec, instead of tying them to this one piece.
Alternative 1.
Well, if they raise more money, they could build something, we could find something else. I would like to give, if we're going to encumber these funds, not tying it down, if that's a possibility with the city manager.
I actually was thinking similarly while you were speaking, in that the council could consider that to the extent that there is the ability to fundraise or look for grants or other modulars. I do have some concerns with staff taking on that work from a staff capacity standpoint. But if there is the identification of any of these sources, particularly a modular, through other channels, then we would be able to supplement how that $175,000 could be used to leverage the opportunity that would be presented. So that type of flexibility, and of course we'd come back to the City Council either through an informational report or an actual action item.
It's even, we have our Santa Clara City, Santa Clara Unified School District Liaison Committee meeting. We can bring that up at the next meeting. So I think the intent of the motion, friendly amendment, is that tomorrow that maybe the city staff doesn't run out and start improving that building, to give us a little time to maybe explore other opportunities through the club and maybe through our relationship with the school district, to see if they have the several districts in our city, to see if anyone has anything that they can help us with.
Can I comment, or?
Yes, go ahead.
I mean, I don't want to interfere. We would rather see you put that money in abeyance for some time in the future. And we've been putting up with this construction trailer for a number of years, and we can go on putting up with it as long as there's light at the end of the tunnel here. For our side, that would be a better arrangement. To spend this kind of money into a rusted old piece of junk, and I don't know if any of you have been out there to look at it, you wouldn't put this money in your own homes, I don't think. You would probably build another home or move away. But
so you're okay with more exploration before spending the money?
Oh, definitely.
So how would that work, city manager, then? We just reserve the money?
I want to understand what are any risk issues with respect to leaving the building as is, whether there's any public health and safety immediate repairs needed. And I also just want to manage expectations, because while you mentioned that we're not going to start tomorrow with looking for how to repair, we also aren't going to start tomorrow with making this a top priority for us to go out and look for modulars or grants or any of those sources. Clearly, there's a list, and we can communicate regularly on the status of how this is going with respect to following up, but I just have to temper expectations that this will be the next high priority item. We have plenty of
I
other high
No, I
priority
agree with
items.
that. I think that there's other avenues. I think that the question was, do we not want to spend the money until we've, maybe all other avenues have been explored, from the Lawn Bowls Club and maybe our
I
relationships
understood
through
that,
our
and
joint committees. I'm not
yeah,
expecting
I
staff
understood
to
that,
run
but to
out.
the extent that there's public health and safety repairs that are needed, which only we can assess,
Yeah,
we may
don't
be
know
duty
that.
bound to conduct those just for sake of managing risk on the part of the city.
Okay.
If I could add one more item as well, I think one thing that we want to be aware of also is that there are certain repairs that you want to make them happen before the systems are no longer functioning, where they can no longer be repaired. So even beyond health and safety, just repairs that at some point, if you wait longer, they become cost prohibitive. So I think any interim thing that we're going to look at, I think we should look at it within a certain period of time. And if it's not feasible, we should move forward and just kind of repair what we have so we can keep it going for a longer period of time.
So I see that we have a couple of motions and friendly amendment on the dais right now. Maybe we want to relook at that, Vice Mayor?
Do you want me to withdraw? I'm happy to withdraw the motion and start all over again.
Friendly amendment withdrawn?
Oh, that's fine.
Okay.
Yep.
So both motions are withdrawn, and let's start all over now. Vice Mayor, did you want to start all over with the motion?
Okay. A motion to continue, to put the money in abeyance and continue to explore options to find explore modulars or through the school district, and also does
Fundraising
the Lawn
from them.
Bowling Club would explore grants, grant opportunities on its own, and then come back and come back with a suitable clubhouse that will make the Lawn Bowling Club.
But also to deal with the health and safety issues, right? Immediately.
And repairs that can become cost prohibitive and more expensive than the repair itself. The replacement is more expensive.
I can understand, yeah, fixing liabilities up, that's not a problem. But to put money into this, or even to put one of these things in your park, these don't belong in that park. They just.
We understand, Mr.
All right, I
Quattriani.
won't
We're trying to just at least spend the minimum amount of money right now to deal with any health and safety and fixing any systems that may need to be fixed
That's
right
fine.
now. And in the meantime, explore other options, because we're listening to you, and we agree that maybe we don't want to put all that money into a facility that isn't worth us putting money into without exploring all the other options that may be out there that maybe the city council could help with, or even your club, in terms of grants or other fundraising for this. So that's why we listen to you, and we get that. So, but
Thank you.
But our city staff, again, will have to deal with any health and safety or any looking at any systems that they may I'm going to, for lack of a better term, put a Band-Aid on right now. So that we can continue trying to find the best solution to help fulfill the promises that were made back in the 2000 and whatever, when none of us were here. So, okay, so I think that's the motion on the floor. City Clerk, do you have that motion, or do you need clarification? You have the motion? Okay, there was a motion. Was there a second?
I did the second.
Oh, you did the second. Councilmember Davis. Oh, I see. Councilmember Davis, did you want to speak?
Yeah. When you, Manuel, when they go into the exploratory world of dealing with the school district or whoever for another option, can you also put in there, when you were talking about the utilities, you know, that have to go with this, if there's going to be a kitchenette or a bathroom or whatever is going to be added to this? I think we need to hear those prices of how that's going to come back to them, because, I mean, I get that, but I just want to make sure that when you come back with us that we understand that. And you will come back with what has to immediately be repaired so that there's nobody getting hurt out there. So that was my issue, because when he brought up the ADA ramps and two people can't go up the ramp at the same time, that's kind of an issue, isn't it, right now?
I can't speak specifically to kind of what the issues might be, so I don't want
Okay,
to speak out
okay.
of turn, but certainly we'll work internally to figure out if there's any fixes that need to occur immediately,
Okay.
and we'll take care of those. As it relates to whether the school has a modular or the Lawn Bowls Club can come up with something different or a funding, I think once they determine what that would be, we would do a full cost estimate to it, because there are costs beyond just the modular itself that we would, which is what we did today, provide the whole picture for you.
So will this come back to us like in February or something, or?
You know, I think part of the schedule will really, will be driven by kind of what Lawn Bowls Club will tell us as to what they think they can do from a fundraising perspective, and it sounds like from a school district perspective, something that's going to come up as part of the meeting.
Right.
So I can't commit to a schedule right now. It's really going to be driven both by their schedule and their ability to determine how quickly they can fundraise, and then once we speak to the school district, realistically, what they think, how quickly they can provide us information and what that information is. So at that point, we'll know a little more.
So we're kind of moving this way,
Yes.
for lack of a better term, the
We have a
Band-Aid.
motion in a second.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, and then in the interim, we will look at what needs to be done, and if something needs to be done, we'll probably just do an informational memo for you and get going on that stuff on a parallel track.
Thank you.
Sure.
We have a motion in a second. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else from the audience that would like to speak on this issue? Okay, seeing none. Please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Paccarani. Next, we have an action on a resolution. Oh, thank you, staff, for also putting together that report. We appreciate that. Action on resolution of necessity to acquire leasehold at 5131 Stars and Stripes Drive, Santa Clara, California, from DE2 Restaurants for a public project and directing the filing of eminent domain proceedings. Assistant City Manager Shikata.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Ruth Shikata, Assistant City Manager. So tonight before you, we have two items on the agenda, item number 7 and item number 8, which are both resolution of necessities to acquire property interests. We're going to have two separate presentations on these items, but then they're going to be, the background and the context are very similar, so I'm going to go through that first on item 7 on 5131 Stars and Stripes, and then we'll ask for your consideration, and then we'll move on to item number 8. But again, the context and the background are very similar. So tonight, we're asking the council to consider the need to proceed with eminent domain action. This is about the need to acquire the property interest for a public purpose, and tonight's consideration is not about compensation. So if the council decides to move forward with the proceeding and adopt the resolution of necessity, then the compensation question would be determined through the courts. As a background on this project, the City Place project was approved in June of 2016. And at that time, the city approvals included approval of an environmental impact report, the zoning, which is a master plan community, a disposition and development agreement, a development agreement, and an infrastructure master plan. So the development, as you know, is about 240-acre development, and it's currently being used as a golf course and some vacant properties. So as a golf course, it currently does not have the public infrastructure necessary to support private development. And we're not here to talk about the private development, but the public infrastructure that's needed. So the public infrastructure includes roadways, utilities, electric, water, storm drains, sewer, et cetera. The landfill gas collection system is a utility that would be owned by infrastructure that would be owned by the public, the city. And then there are other improvements that are impacted by our need and our desire to put in the roadways, which include the transit station, the Great American Transit Station, and the parks that would be developed on site. So any redevelopment of the golf course property would require the installation of a circulation network, which would accommodate cars, bicycles, pedestrians, and would allow for access not only to the development, but through access from Great America Parkway to Tasman Drive, Lafayette, and then to the train station itself. And then again, within public right-of-ways are typically installation of utilities. So the community, the master MCP, the master community plan, was approved by council in June and then finalized with appropriate exhibits incorporating the new 31-acre City Place Park in it in the spring of 2017. And so this document is posted on the city's website and has been posted for last year or so. In it, it provides for a number of diagrams and plans showing how the area would be developed. One of those plans includes a diagram of the street network that would be for the overall project area. And you note on the southern end of the project that there is a series of streets which we would call the relocation of Stars and Stripes and the extension of avenues A, B, and C. Now, the green little dotted lines boxes denote the public streets that would be within the site, and then the blue lines are more private streets. But then the areas in the south are all public streets, and that would require, again, public improvements, public utilities. So you'll note on this particular diagram that there is a red dotted line on the south. I don't know if this works. So on the south, and then that pretty much denotes where the existing Tasman lots are. To the south of the red dotted line, which is the phase 1 of the development site, is the Tasman lots, and where the current Stars and Stripes is located. And the reason why we're relocating Stars and Stripes to about 100 feet north of its current location, there's a couple reasons. One is the access and the development areas that we're looking at to create the project that we want to. So in other words, that the grade at Tasman Drive is much higher than the grade at Stars and Stripes. And in addition to building some underground parking and to redo the gas collection systems and to work on the landfill, we're going to need to raise the elevation of the street. And so notwithstanding the notion that maybe we could leave Stars and Stripes in place, that the elevation of Stars and Stripes in and of itself, in order to accommodate the utility network and the gas collection system necessary, the whole street would need to move up, so that the eventual finished grade of the intersection of Stars and Stripes and Centennial would be 15 feet or so above its current location, which would not allow for the continuation of activity that's currently on the site, whether it be the fire station or the banquet facility, or for that matter, the golf course. In addition, that we are looking at enhanced access to the Great America Station. The Great America train station currently provides a series of shuttle service for the people that use that station. It's very heavily used in the morning and the afternoon for commuters. And the only way to continue to provide access for that train station is to build an alternate access when the Phase 1 project starts of City Place. So the entire access system on the south side we need to change, and we need to plan for that in advance. So here's a more detailed diagram of the relocation of Stars and Stripes. And you can see in the orangey beige color the existing location of Stars and Stripes as it curves south. And then the blue line, the heavy blue line, is the new location of Stars and Stripes. And then you'll note that for this particular item at 5131 Stars and Stripes, that the facility in question is located right on the blue stripe where the public street will be relocated. So the property interest that we're interested in discussing tonight is a leasehold that was executed with DE Restaurants 2 in July of 1999 at 5131 Stars and Stripes Drive. It has a term of 20 years with, the lease provides for a 20-year term with two 5-year options. So currently the longest term of the lease could be through 2029. So the city needs to acquire the leasehold in order to construct the street. We currently own the land underneath the leasehold. The city owns the building, and the city owns the parking lot that's associated with it. Discussions have been ongoing for several years, and a formal offer was made to the tenant based upon appraisal. This offer was transmitted in October of 2018. So the tenant, DE Restaurants, has the right to secure its own appraisal. It's been provided access to a relocation consultant that's been paid by the city. The tenant has met with our relocation consultant several times, and the consultant has provided the tenant with information about how it might be eligible for furniture, fixtures, and equipment claims, and for potential loss of business goodwill. In order for us to continue to process and look at the valuation of those potential claims, we need information from the tenant, and we are on standby right now, waiting for information to come over so that we can provide further assistance. And as always, despite the action that we're asking you to consider tonight, we can continue to negotiate for a resolution rather than to have it being resolved through the courts. We would ask that would be done concurrently. So the resolution of necessity requires the council to make several findings. They include that the public interest and necessity is required in order for the project. So the project, again, is for the public infrastructure, the public roads. And the project is planned for or located in a manner that's the most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury. So all of that includes the necessary public access through the development site to provide continued access to the train station. The property sought for is necessary for the project, and then an offer under the government code has been made. There are more background materials in the staff report. It has a little more detail than what I went through tonight. So the next steps would be, we'll be asking again for the council's consideration of the adoption of the resolution. If the council does vote in favor of that adoption, then we would file an action and deposit funds into the court, and we would request a possession order, and then there would be the court hearing following. And again, I want to continue to reemphasize that while all this is happening, we can continue to work with the tenant to see whether or not that we can come to a successful negotiation and agreement between us while we continue to press forward. The one other thing I did not mention in the report was just relative to the timing. Our DDA with the developer and our arrangement calls for the start of construction of the project in the relatively soon future. So right now, the last scheduled performance would have that construction and the takedown start no later than August of 2019. We are in a force majeure position right now. We've got a few things to work through so that time is actually a little later. But it all goes to show that the need to acquire the property interest is rather sooner, so that we can start looking at the roadway systems and making sure that there's continuous access for the train station versus later, because this will not be a later phase of the project. It'll be an earlier phase. It won't be in year 35, but rather year 1. So with that, I'd also like to introduce Gail Connor. Gail is our outside counsel on this particular matter, and he's also available to answer any questions that you might have.
All right, thank you, Assistant City Manager, for that report. Is there any member of the council that has questions of our Assistant City Manager or our council here? No, seeing none. I have a list of public members. Is that appropriate, City Attorney, that we go to the public at this point?
This is a public hearing.
Okay,
So we should take any public testimony.
all right, thank you. First, I have Dave Delosier, followed by David Ebrahimi. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Dave Delosier, and I'm here to talk in non-support of using eminent domain. Whether it's David's or it's Jane or John Doe, I don't care. This city has never in its history used eminent domain, and I hate to see us start now, especially using it against a long-term 30-plus year partner of the city in benefit for a newcomer developer that has tied up our land for 6 years now without paying 1 cent of leasehold revenue. And with the way that they're going to phase this out, we're not going to get any kind of good money for our land for 20, 30 years to come. So I implore you, please do not open Pandora's box and use eminent domain. It's not fair to your citizens. It's not fair to your business community. It's immoral. And to tell you the truth, I think it's a political liability for each of you in the future.
Thank you. David Ebrahimi and then Jean Ebrahimi. After that. Welcome, sir.
Madam Mayor and council members, good evening. Thank you for your partnership with us for the last 33 years. When we began David Restaurant some 33 years ago, along with the city, David was the only building in the area. With dedication and passion and many challenges on the way, we made David so successful that the city decided to open another location named David's Banquet of Santa Clara. As Santa Clara evolved through the years, hotels, cooperation, and establishment surrounding us. Today, I'm in a prime location with a unique, desirable location. Even though you are trying to relocate us, there isn't anything available that even compared to David's. We do not want to impede the new city's place development. However, I'm dedicated to my business, employees, brand name, and client, and wish to continue operation in my current location. We believe there are other alternatives available on 230 acres of vacant land rather than going through to our business, which has additional 11 years lease remaining. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. Jean Ebrahimi and then Gary Wesley after that. Good evening.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Jean Ibrahiman, owner of David's Restaurant and Banquet. When we took over David's Restaurant 31 years ago, it was a desolate area. Along with the partnership of the city, David and our family worked hard and long hours to establish David's Restaurant and Banquet for the Santa Clara residents and Silicon Valley community. With your assistance, we created a trade name, David's of Santa Clara. Approximately a year and a half ago, a Santa Clara businessman spoke before you with great concerns for his own business and the possibility of eminent domain. Mayor Gilmore, you promised him there would not be any eminent domain actions to any businesses in the North Bay development. If I could get you to pass. A concerned bride who booked her wedding at David's was concerned about the development. She contacted Ruth Shikata on June of 2017, and Ruth stated, unfortunately, the lease at David's Restaurant will be terminated as of June of 2017. However, the banquet facility right next door has a long-term lease, and this might be a viable venue for you. Our business and livelihood has been disregarded in this massive private development. As city leaders, we hope our efforts have been appreciated and our rights are considered. We ask to be treated with fairness. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Wesley and then Daniel Kay. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Gary Wesley. I'm from Mountain View. I'm appearing as an attorney for David Ibrahimi and for his restaurant. And you got a letter from a eminent domain attorney from Martinez. His name is Scott Jenny. And if you do file an eminent domain action, he'll be representing the restaurant in that case. And he first suggested that you continue this matter, but got no positive feedback, so submitted a letter this afternoon. I'm here just to make sure that you know that there is a letter. It's 15 pages. It's pretty easy reading. It's not just all legalese. This isn't just a legal question. It actually is a political question for the council involving determinations of fact, including necessity, that you necessarily have to build the road there and remove these buildings as part of this project. The restaurant would contend that it's not necessary. It hasn't been shown. You know, the state owns El Camino, and maybe they want to build it over here instead. And so they'll declare that it's necessary that we build a road right over City Hall here in Santa Clara for the new El Camino, when really that wasn't necessary at all. And if you have a question about this or you haven't really read the letter, I'd ask that you consider putting this off a week, especially new council members, so you can make your own personal determination in this matter. The letter raises two legal issues. One is, are the requirements for eminent domain satisfied? The letter says no. And the other is a CEQA question, and CEQA lawsuits can tie you up for years. So you might want to just put this off for a week. Thanks so much.
Let's see, Daniel Kay and then Joseph Gugliardi after that. Good evening.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of council staff. My name is Daniel from Intero Real Estate, Berkshire Hathaway, and I've been a Santa Clara County resident since 1985. My family, friends, colleagues, and past clients have been to David's for a number of occasions for several years. In fact, my older brother, Fred, had his high school Bellarmine graduation here and his bar mitzvah. I had my bar mitzvah at the restaurant, and I actually plan on getting married here someday. So seeing something like this demolished, I think, would be very detrimental and just not fair after being in business for over 30 years and, you know, being a really supporter of City of Santa Clara. I do believe that with all this land of 240 acres, I'm sure there could be a resolution to build around it and keep David's as is, just how it is with its parking lot and structure, and just let them operate, you know, as they have been for over 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Joseph Gugliardi and then Ethan Daniels after that. Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Joseph Gugliardi. I'm here to convey my support in exploring the possibility of keeping David's within the new projects, as it is in the best interest of the city and the community, or at least to keep David's banquet hall operating as long as possible. It is important not to forget the businesses that relocated and went out of their way to come to this location to help develop it to what it is today from infancy. These men and women deserve to be commended and appreciated for their dedicated partnership with the city of Santa Clara. The company I founded in the 70s in the Valley enjoyed our Christmas parties and other occasions since David's openings. David and his wife work exceptionally hard and with determination to create an establishment of consistent quality for food and services, which is second to none in the Valley, which is not the normal for this kind of business. It seems that it is premature to adopt resolution necessity at this juncture based on eminent domain, as seemingly its provisions are not complied with as of yet, specifically as it relates to causing injury. To offer $5,000 as compensation for their 10-year lease option and their hard work and 31 years at this location, it seems unreasonable and seriously injurious to David and his wife. Obviously, there needs to be greater due diligence on the part of the city as to how to compensate fairly until such time that there is a reasonable offer in this matter. Should be continued, or eminent domain should not be used as basis for resolution necessity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ethan Daniels? Good evening.
Great honor. When I grew up in Chicago, it was always a dream of mine to come to Santa Clara because I used to see the swim meets, the national swim meets. And it's just incredible that I finally wound up working here for the last 20, 30 years. I hold a function for my staff. I'm one of a local cardiologist at David's yearly for a holiday gathering. And he's just a tremendous host. The value that he gives us is incredible. I've had our event at many different venues, and for the price point, there's nothing like it. It's hard to conceive that he'll be able to continue where he is, given enormous money that is involved in creating this large project on the golf course. But this gentleman truly has a place in the community. And I got to tell you, Santa Clara is an absolutely fabulous community. And I feel very fortunate to be able to work here and hold our holiday event for 170 nurses, physician's assistants, clerks, EKG technicians, echo technicians, and on and on. But they just absolutely love the event. And it's just a wonderful way to tell them how appreciated they are for the care that they give so many people from the community. And it's an honor to speak before the committee. I've never done anything like this, and I don't think I can last another 40 seconds. God bless.
Thank you. Welcome. Thank you. I have no other speaker card, so if anyone else would like to speak, please come forward. Good evening.
Good evening. Hello, my name is Kevin Park. I remember being here when Jean Ebrahimi was asking about the restaurant, when you closed the restaurant. And I remember standing up here thinking, why don't they answer that poor woman? Because she's been standing up here, and I believe that Teresa O'Neill was chairing that meeting, and nothing happened. In fact, I think Debbie Bress had to come up and say, why can't you answer what this woman is saying? It's very clear that this city council has had an issue with perhaps David and perhaps Jean for a long time. But I think now, for it to culminate with a eminent domain to take away their final property, you already took away the restaurant, now you want to take away the banquet hall too? When we look at the streets, we see that the street also opens up into the garage that you built right next door, and the garage is much closer than the restaurant is. And if you can't make that, if you can make the grade for the garage, I don't see why you can't do that for the banquet hall. I understand that we gave Related a sweetheart deal because we needed the money, we lost all our redevelopment funds, but at the same time, if we had negotiated, hey, we have a Santa Clara, it's like part of our heritage. David's has been here longer than I have. I'm pretty old. But I'm saying for us to not have negotiated something that says, hey, we have something that is part of Santa Clara, we'd like, if we can, to save it. And if you're not gonna save it, we can't negotiate a deal better than $5,000. David pays, I think, if I read the report correctly, $10,000 a month. Plus he's got 11 years on the contract, and our compensation is $5,000. At some point, we made a lot of mistakes in our past, giving related, no bids. It was a single bid deal. We seem to be wanting to push this business out, but at the same time, I don't think that's a good thing for Santa Clara or the businesses, especially when it comes down to eminent domain as the method for getting David out. None of this sounds very good. None of it seems very right. And oh my goodness, I feel very sad. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public want to speak? Okay, since we've heard all the members of the public, Mr. Ebrahimi, if you'd like to make any comments, any additional comments, I want to make sure you have time to be able to do that.
Thank you for the second opportunity.
Sure.
All we are asking for, we're not going to stop this project, city project. We just want to continue something that I gave, sacrificing my family and everything in my life for last minute of it. So by doing what you're planning to do, you really better get a gun and shoot me. I'll be happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hardy, or City Attorney, do we need to close the public hearing?
Yes.
Okay, motion to close the public hearing, please.
I had a question of the.
Yeah, you can after that. Motion second just to close the public hearing. Councilmember O'Neill, seconded by Councilmember Davis. This is just to close the public hearing, and then you can ask questions. Please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Councilmember Hardy, you had some questions.
I didn't have questions of our attorney before that, but I'd like to hear his rebuttal to the concerns about eminent domain and the specific on page 13 of the letter that's 15 pages long of the bullet points there.
Okay, thank you. The bullet points on page 13 go to the obligation that the city has to provide relocation assistance to this displaced business. Now, the relocation process is actually outside of the context of the eminent domain proceeding, but we do have an obligation to provide it, and we are meeting that obligation. We had retained Associated Right-of-Way Services, which is the premier relocation a group for public entities in Northern California. They have provided Mr. Ibrahimi with all of the required information about his rights, about how the relocation process works, about the his rights to seek compensation in addition to the leasehold value for loss of business goodwill, either on a negotiated basis or in the eminent domain process. And they've begun to provide him with alternative sites. Now, the important thing to remember about the relocation law, which gets a little lost in this letter, is that the city is obligated to provide him with assistance. It's not obligated to find him a satisfactory replacement site. Now, we're going to do whatever we can, and they're going to do whatever they can to do that. But that is not a condition for acquiring the property. Hopefully, they're going to find a site, and this process will be ongoing. But finding him an acceptable site is not one of the findings or one of the preconditions for adopting a resolution of necessity to condemn. Was that sufficient, or?
That answers half of it. The other half was the concern about using eminent domain in this case.
Okay. I can't speak to the political issue, but I can speak to the legal issue.
That's fine.
Legally, building streets and infrastructure, either to promote development or to serve existing development, is one of the fundamental functions of any political subdivision in the state of California. That's what cities do. That's what the project here is. We are acquiring these property interests for Stars and Stripes Boulevard. Stars and Stripes, the relocation of which has been a part of the CEQA process, has been a part of the planning process for years. If relocating it had been, if there were objections to relocating it based on CEQA concerns, based on environmental issues, that should have been raised during the CEQA process. That process has now been completed. The time for appeals has expired, so there will be no new CEQA litigation arising out of this.
Do you have additional questions, Councilmember Hardy? Any other council members? O'Neill?
Thank you. So this may be more of a, maybe a question for Ruth. In terms of like, there's a reference, and we just got this letter, so it's a little hard to listen to everybody with full, give people the appropriate attention that they deserve and to read a 15-page letter. But there is, some discussion about in here, and they referenced it in the presentation, the master community plan, which we did approve about a year and a half ago. And one of the things that's here indicates that the master community plan of April 5th, 2017 indicates throughout that every design is preliminary. To date, there's no final plan for the development. It is premature to condemn and relocate Davidson until and unless such time as final plan is approved and adopted by the city. So I don't know if you can comment to that. I think the further phases that were referred to earlier that could take place in it as long as 20 or more years from now, I think those are very preliminary. But isn't the relocation of Stars and Stripes, wasn't that required for the first phase, which is fairly, at least the infrastructure, some of the makeup of the individual buildings may change, but maybe you could speak to that role of the master community plan?
Sure. So it is true that specific plans for the development of specific blocks, the early phase of the project has not come in yet. But having said that, usually what happens is the developer understands what the parameters or the perimeter of the project is before they actually then develop the plans for the buildings themselves. And the perimeter of the project is really going to be the public streets. And so whereas the master community plan and the infrastructure master plan does have it has the layout of the street itself. So it has a location, a general location of the street, and we have an understanding of where the development perimeters are. And so the developer is working on their specific plans to submit into the city, which would be the development area plans, so that those will come in. They'll be heard by the planning commission at a later date, and that would probably be sometime in it'll be submitted probably in the third quarter of 2019. And then, but it's important to understand for them, it's important to understand where the public infrastructure is going to be in order to get those plans submitted. And that's something that the city needs to provide them.
Right, because I know there is a fairly already developed roadway structure, and I know that with our work with VTA, with the recently approved multimodal plan and some of the discussion about the improvements to the station at Tasman and Lafayette and all that. So that part of it seems like it has been fairly well. So what I'm getting to is there was a point raised about could we divert the roadway a little bit around the restaurant. So there's that question, and my other question is, like you mentioned, the difference between the grade. Like I think almost anybody who's been out there, particularly if they're going to an event at Levi Stadium or whatever, you come to Tasman and then you go down into what we all call the Tasman lots, and you do drop down quite a distance. I don't know if it's 15 or 20 feet or something like that. So the point was raised, could the restaurant be left where it is? And so I'm as I recall looking at the plan, I think that and I think you alluded to it, that the front, there's going to be, I'm not an engineer, I'm not quite recalling, but the front part is going to be kind of raised, and then behind that, there's going to be a podium on the, for the golf course. So my question is it feasible even to leave the restaurant where it is if we need to make changes to those Tasman lots, and if there's going to be a podium built over the rest of the golf course? Would it even be feasible?
We don't believe that that's feasible. On a vertical especially on a vertical basis. People tend to look at a plan view and say where maybe the street can move 5 feet north, 5 feet south, or something like that. But because of all the infrastructure that's necessary in order to support redevelopment of the overall project, the gas collection systems, the new public infrastructure, storm drains, electricity, and everything else, that we can't dig under what we currently have, because what we currently have is a landfill. So everything has to be raised in order to accommodate that public infrastructure. So looking at the grades on where Tasman is right now, and then where we need to be on a finished product basis, so that on a vertical basis where David's is at right now, I don't see how it can actually stay in place, even if we were to try and relocate the Stars and Stripes on a horizontal basis in a different location.
Okay, thank you.
Assistant City Manager, could you restate how long this process has taken? Because it's not like we started yesterday on this. Could you tell us how many years it's taken to get to this point, and in terms of discussions and negotiations? And
so the early concepts of the project was brought forward to the council in the spring of 2013, so it's been at least 5 years. The actual public hearings, after we started the CEQA process, started to look at the development of an environmental impact report, looked at the zoning and all of the plans that we were talking about tonight, the master community plan, the infrastructure master plan, that came forward to the council in June of 2016. So that was more than 2 years ago. So we've been talking about this project and the configuration of the project for a long time, years. 5 if you want to start off with the concept, and then at least 3+ years as we start talking about more details of where things are located.
And we've been working with David's Restaurant for all of that time?
We've had dialogue. Certainly, we've had dialogue with David's about the project site, and early on we talked about his interest, mutual interest of possibly looking at, well, what does his future look like, and let's imagine, so to speak. And so we've had those kinds of conversation with him over the years, and then more recently, I've had conversations of like, well, let's really talk about what it is that you might be interested in, and help us understand that. And so that's why I was alluding to a little bit earlier, and then as our attorney mentioned, looking at relocation sites and how to provide him with potential assistance, we do need some more information, and we've been asking. And so we will continue to try and provide assistance where we can, but we need some more information in order to provide him with better assistance.
I understand that. I just wanted to talk about the city's effort so
Sure.
far. And it's also for the public, it's significant for everyone to know that this is city property. We are not, we're dealing with a lease. We're not taking anyone's property. It's property the city already owns. City Manager, you had some comments? Oh, City Attorney? One of you said that somebody wanted to speak. Okay, Councilmember Hardy and then Councilmember O'Neill again.
Thank you. I need to get up to speed as quickly as I can on this. I appreciate The letter that was referenced that was sent to David's was October 28th of this year. Am I correct? But I was trying to understand how long this business owner has been given to understand that his business on city property is not compatible with this development.
We did send him a formal offer as required under the code on October, yes, it was dated October 5th, and it was based upon an appraisal that we had commissioned. But this was the formal offer as required underneath the code, but we have been talking with him for years about the potential development, and in fact that he came and testified at the hearing in June of 2016 about the project.
Was eminent domain ever mentioned before that?
I don't recall specifically. Certainly that our hope is always to be able to try and work collaboratively with people, with organizations to come to some kind of mutual agreement. And as Mr. Dillinger said before, that the city has not had a history of doing that, because the city has always made to try to make that extra effort to come to a satisfactory conclusion. But in this case, we haven't been able to do that.
May I supplement? Make one point that we did notify him in the spring of this year that we were considering eminent domain. The notification was in the way of telling him that we'd hired an appraiser who would be appraising his property for potential eminent domain acquisition, and inviting him to meet with the appraiser to discuss, his leasehold and what he thought were the valuable attributes. So we did notify him in the spring of this year.
Thank you. Yes, Councilmember O'Neill.
Okay, thank you. So one comment I wanted to make, I know there was a remark that was made in, I believe it was by Mr. Delosier, about the comments made about eminent domain. I think that was in reference to the Tasman East specific plan, which that is not city-owned property, and we've, I think the council, I don't know, I hope our new members will be in agreement, has been very strong in that we will not pursue eminent domain on those privately held properties. So that's why that development probably is going to take place over a longer period of time, because there are a number of property owners there that do not wish to participate in the specific plan at this time. So once again, Assistant City Manager Shikata, I'm going through the letter and I noticed there was, once again on that page 3 in section 4, there was a comment made about that you have to be able to, that you're going to use the property within 7 years from when the complaint is filed. And then it refers to the completion date is 2035. But, and so I wanted to ask you to clarify, my impression was that this property was needed for the first phase, which is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, and so that would be needed sooner, that would be within the 7-year window, that would not be out towards 2035, is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure that I got that correctly. And the one comment I would make, I mean, there are references in the letter to 2016. I do remember Mr. Ibrahimi and Mrs. Ibrahimi being here. I mean, I think these discussions have been going on ever since, I know when Councilmember Davis and I came onto the council, some of the first big meetings we started having was about this project. So I know some people thought it wasn't going to possibly happen, but so that's close to 6 years that there's been various discussions. So I think that, and there was mention of the relocation offer, I believe that we've been briefed on that there have been efforts over the years to assist with relocation. I mean, the impression that I'm given is that this is after, this is a process that was started because the relocation was not able to come to an acceptable, a mutually acceptable conclusion?
Well, we've had discussions about, again, about the potential future, and then so that might be relocation. So we were talking in terms of various, not specifics like we are like now, required to provide specific relocation assistance. We were discussing with the tenant about, if you were to move somewhere else, where might that be, and what might be, and be interested to see whether or not that we could explore providing him with a potential alternative sooner that would be of interest to him rather than being at a hearing today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members? Okay. Motion? Oh, Councilmember Hardy?
I'm sorry, I had one more question for our legal team. If this passes, is the compensation, are we tied to that? Does that lock that in? What is, let me understand it.
Absolutely. And Mr. Jenny in his letter makes a very, very important point. He states, and I believe it's at the bottom of page 9, top of page 10, that he has a right, constitutional right, to have the just compensation determined by a jury trial. We agree with that. We're not surprised that he's not happy with our number. Property owners oftentimes aren't happy with the numbers. That's why the eminent domain process is set up, to take that out of the hands of us and put it in the hands of jurors who will decide on what the just compensation is based on testimony from appraisers and planners and property owner and business owner and the like. The one thing I do want to emphasize is that while we do not believe that his lease, which is a property right, has significant value, it is very possible that he has, or he will have, a compensable loss of business goodwill claim that would be litigated in the eminent domain process. And if he can establish he's lost business goodwill, that would be added to the compensation that he would recover at the end of the process. So the $5,000 is the start. And I would imagine if this thing goes to trial, that that he's going to be asking for significantly more money. The decision won't be up to us; it'll be up to a jury.
So you foresee this going to trial?
Eminent domain cases almost never go to trial, but it does happen. The code provides for a mechanism just before trial for the parties, after they've disclosed their expert witnesses and deposed all the appraisers and looked at all the valuation issues, to make a final offer and demand before trial. And they put in a kicker. If the city's, the condemning authority's offer is not accepted and the case goes to trial and the property owner gets a verdict, gets a decision that's closer to its number than to the city's number, and it's a material difference, the property owner has the right to then go in and ask for attorney's fees on the grounds that the city failed to make a good faith final offer. That tends to motivate both parties to look very, very carefully at their case in view of the evidence that they know the other side is going to present, and think, geez, what are my real exposures here? And so it works to bring both sides towards the middle. And what often happens is after the offer and demand have been made, typically there is some kind of a mandatory settlement conference or mediation process, perhaps through a private mediator, to bridge the gap. And that's where most eminent domain cases end up settling. As I said, very few go to trial, but it does happen.
Vice Mayor Watanabe.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to ask, I'm glad you brought up about the mediation process. Has any mediation taken place at all at this point?
It has not, because until you all decide to adopt a resolution of necessity and move forward, we're not in a position to force any kind of a judicial resolution process.
Okay, thank you. If I don't have anything else, but just would like to go ahead and just make a motion to adopt the resolution of necessity to acquire property interests at 55131 Stars and Stripes Drive, Santa Clara, from DE to restaurants for a public project and directing the filing of eminent domain proceedings.
Motion, is there a second? Second. Councilmember O'Neill?
Yes, I just wanted to, thank you for that motion. I wanted to ask one more question about the process where maybe where the value would be set. So would it be both sides? Would there be kind of like an accounting by both sides, like, you know, whether the financials, potential financials from the city side, and in order to determine a fair value, would there, you know, rather than just kind of saying, okay, well, this is what I think my business is worth, would David's restaurant and banquet also have to do, like if the city has to do a full accounting, would they have to do a full accounting so that you could be able to say, okay, this is what the actual, what the volume of is, as opposed to the assets inside the building, what the actual sales have been?
Yes, and in fact, in the letter, Mr. Jenny says that they plan to hire a real estate appraiser and a goodwill appraiser. We will do exactly the same thing. And to a certain extent, the eminent domain valuation process becomes kind of a conflict between the appraisers for the city and the appraisers for the property owner. They will have a goodwill appraiser, we'll have a goodwill appraiser. Both appraisers will look at the revenue generated by the business. They'll look at profit and loss statements, any other materials that might be relevant to how the business is to be valued. So they both have the same documents, both working off of the same empirical information. And if we can settle, that's ideal. If we can't, then it's up to the jury to decide which appraiser has more accurately valued whatever losses may have been suffered.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any other questions or discussion from the council? Okay, City Clerk. Is there anything from staff? Anything else that we need to do? Okay, please register your vote. And that passes on a 5-1 vote. Okay, so the next item is a similar type action. Action on resolution of necessity to acquire recreation facility rights from leasehold located at 5105 Great America Parkway, Santa Clara, California, from, is it IA Lodging, Santa Clara LLC, for a public project and directing the filing of eminent domain proceedings.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Ruth Shikata, Assistant City Manager. So this, as I mentioned before, the context and the background of this particular item is the same as the item before, item number 7. So we're considering the need to proceed with eminent domain action, and any compensation would be determined at a later date. Again, the City Place project was approved in June. The council approved a series of documents that set out the public infrastructure necessary for the overall project. Those include roads, utilities, gas collection systems, and there's a series of circulation on roads that are needed in order to have access to existing public infrastructure. They're all contained in the master community plan. So for this particular item is the recreation facilities agreement. And let me actually go to the next one, next slide here. So the leasehold at 5105 Great America Parkway is the leasehold for the Hyatt Regency Hotel in the Convention Center complex. And as an inducement for that particular lease and that particular project, the city executed, the city and the redevelopment agency and the Sports and Open Space Authority executed a series of agreements that would provide for additional benefits to the hotel and its patrons. So one of those agreements was the recreation facilities agreement. The recreation facilities agreement provided that the tenant would help pay for and the construction of 4 of the tennis courts at the Santa Clara Golf and Tennis Club, and it offered certain benefits to the hotel and its patrons for use of the facility, and those include billing services. So if somebody came and wanted to book a tea time at the golf course, that they would be able to do that and bill that charge, that cost to their hotel room. And it provided for some other reservation benefits if they wanted to, again, tea time or tennis courts. So the agreement that we're looking at, the recreation facilities agreement, covers the entirety of the golf course and the tennis courts. So if we go back here, you'll note that again that there is a series of public streets all throughout the development site, and those streets cannot be constructed unless the golf course goes away. There's not an ability to continue to maintain the use of the golf course or the tennis courts, which are depicted on this particular slide, while the public facilities are being constructed and or its after condition. So what we're asking is, what we need to do is asking for the ability to terminate the recreation facilities agreement. And we've had discussions with IA Lodging, also known as Xenia, for several years now. Again, similarly, we knew that this was going to be coming, and so we started to talk to them early on about the need to acquire the rights under the recreation facilities agreement. We made a formal offer. We advised them in the spring that we were conducting an appraisal to move forward with a potential condemnation action. The formal offer was made on September 20th of this year. And so IA Lodging has a right to secure its own appraisal, and again, we can continue to negotiate. So in this particular action and the resolution, that we're asking the council to make certain findings. They're the same findings necessary that the public interest and necessity require the project. Again, it's the public streets, the public infrastructure. The project is planned or located in a manner that would be most compatible with the greatest public good and the least private injury. That the property sought forward to be acquired is necessary for the project, and an offer under the government code has been made. So after the council considers and hopefully adopts the resolution, then an action will be filed in court and deposit of funds will be made, and then we'll seek possession of the property. So that concludes our staff report.
Any questions from the council on this? Councilmember O'Neill.
I just had a quick, was it me?
Councilmember O'Neill.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I just have one question. I'll go fast, Karen. So Ruth, has the idea been brought forward? You know, we're going to be having a new 35-acre park that's going to be north of the site where the hotel is. And, you know, we're obviously not having begun to master plan that. Has even the idea been brought up that when the city begins to develop that park, that there could be, you know, just as we have at Central Park, we have a tennis center there that is, I believe, membership driven. And, you know, it's not a completely, you know, because there are other open tennis courts in Central Park. I mean, the idea that there could be, say, a tennis facility in that 35-acre park that maybe would even be of more interest to their guests?
We have not had that specific discussion with them, in part because we haven't really looked at what the potential programming of City Park may be. But they have also indicated that they have a number of interests that are above and beyond the golf course itself. They have interest in looking at the type of development that's on the City Place project, They have interest in the ballroom, acquiring more rights in the ballroom at the convention center, so that their interests lie more in that direction. But we can certainly talk to them about what their interests may be relative to replacement of tennis courts in close proximity.
But this action doesn't impact their license rights to the Great America Ballroom, does it?
They have requested additional rights as part of their negotiating position.
Okay, you're right. So we're in the leverage part of it. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Hardy?
Sorry. Yes, I just had the question of when, how long is the lease on the tennis courts separate, and how long has that been in force?
So the recreation facilities agreement is the overarching agreement, and it's been there since the lease on the Hyatt Hotel was executed. So I want to say 1985.
Councilmember O'Neill?
Yeah, but that's not, they don't have exclusive rights to the tennis courts. They just get, they have the right to have their guests play
Correct.
there.
They have the right to use.
Okay, but it's not exclusive. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Watanabe?
Thank you, Mayor. Another question, I'm sorry, before you sit down. Do we have any information or any data as to how many, like, hotel guests use the tennis courts on a regular basis? Because
we've been working with our Parks Department and have asked, and the general manager doesn't recall a time in recent years that they've had hotel patrons requesting use of the tennis courts or billed any tea times to the hotel rooms. It's not to say that that might not have happened, but that there's no outward use of the recreation facilities agreement by hotel patrons.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Is there any representative here from the name of this? IA Lodging Santa Clara LLC here that would like to testify? No representatives? Okay, so the record show there's no representatives here. Do we have any cards on the issue? I see none. Would any member of the public like to speak on this issue? All right, is there a motion to close the public hearing? Motion second to close the public hearing. Please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Councilmember Davis?
I'd like to make a motion, Mayor. Thank you. I would like to make the staff recommendation for alternative 1 to adopt the resolution of necessity to acquire real property interests at 5105 Great America Parkway, Santa Clara, as it relates to the use and operation of Santa Clara Golf and Tennis Facility from IA Lodging Santa Clara for a public project and directing the filing of eminent domain proceedings.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion on that? Okay, seeing none. There's a motion and a second. City Clerk, please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Assistant City Manager and our representative attorney. Thank you. All right, next we have the action on the appointment of a Tourism Improvement District TID Advisory Board and action to authorize the city manager with approval authority to pay the TID invoices. City Manager?
This is following the audit that the council heard recently on the TID. And as part of the report out, it became clear that the city council has not formally appointed the TID advisory board. In your report, there is a a matrix on page 2 that outlines the advisory board members. It's made up of, the TID is made up of 9 participating hotels. And the action before you allows for the TID advisory board to be formally appointed by the city council, which then would require that any amendments or revisions to the TID board composition would have to come before the council for approval, as well as this TID advisory board would be subject to the Brown Act, where meetings would be noticed. I also, the second part of the recommendation, as we discussed during the audit discussion, there are some outstanding invoices that have occurred since the council formally and correctly put in place the TID levied assessment. We'd like the opportunity to work with the TID to review those invoices and pay eligible invoices so that the TID can continue with its work. I do want to note that invoices would have to be consistent with the adopted budget that the city council approved.
City Manager, did we get the TID money back into the city's, back under the city's authority?
We were able to collect the reserves back from the chamber. There is some additional reconciliation that needs to be completed based on the council's direction as part of the audit. We are also holding, as noted in the report, $200,000 that was collected for the period of time before the corrective action was taken by the council, and since that time, we have collected $95,000. So that's the summary of the 3 different funding trails that we have in place.
So I see the proposal for the TID board is all the general managers of all these hotels. So they understand that if somebody leaves, then that information has to come back to the council for a replacement board member?
If there is a change with respect to composition in terms of increasing the number of participants or bringing in someone outside of the general manager category, we would certainly bring that back to the city council for appointment.
Okay, so they have the opportunity to increase?
If they make a
board?
request as part of their advisory board functions that they'd like to increase their membership, they do not have the authority themselves to increase their participant level. It would have to come before the council for that appropriate adjustment and appointment.
This may seem like a silly question, but so we have the name of the board member and the title of general manager. So if the board member, that particular person leaves, but a new one comes in, but they are the general manager, do they need to come back to the council?
I would bring that action forward.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we understand that, because I didn't. Okay, thank you. Any council member have any questions? Vice Mayor Watanabe?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just had a question. You mentioned the $95,000 that's been collected, and is that, are you able to release that money? Because I had read something about how the money was collected, not in the usual procedure, and so it has to like be held for a year before it can be released. Did I read that correctly?
The reserves that were held by the chamber have been returned to the city, and those are the reserves that will be held for a year because they were not correctly collected.
Right.
The $95,000 has been assessed appropriately, and it allows for us to pay invoices. There is no fiscal agent at this time. I believe the council would have to be in concurrence with whichever fiscal agent is selected, if that's the option that this TID advisory body would like to move in. However, in our last audit discussion, I mentioned that the city should just continue to do this function until there's a more stable environment between putting in place the corrective action, properly appointing the TID, and getting a couple of meetings where staff is involved and we understand the direction that this is going in.
Okay, thank you. And then I have one more question. Is Barbara Radcliffe not the general manager of the Biltmore anymore?
She retired.
She retired. Oh my goodness, nobody told me. Oh, well, that's disappointing. But anyway, well, welcome to John. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis.
I'd like to make a motion, Mayor.
I'm sorry, before that, I'll hold you for the motion. Councilmember Chahal.
I have a question regarding the fiscal impact. You mentioned we don't have any fiscal impact on this one. Although we will be managing this money and paying all those invoices, aren't our staff time involved in that and other stuff?
We will be paying eligible invoices that have proper documentation and that are within the council-approved budget. Anything outside of that we'll need to sort through, and obviously the council will need to make a decision. As part of the audit discussion is one of the recommendations, much like with the convention center audit, there was action to make sure that staff time is covered. This is also an additional assessment. The chamber collected a management fee to cover its costs. We'll need to look at the same type of assessment so that we can sustain and support the TID.
Okay, so going forward, we'll have some staff time and we'll be billing to the TID on that.
Yes, I need to, with the significant amount of hours that we've worked on the convention center and the TID, I need to establish a time card code so that we can start to track that.
Okay, so this will change. Don't going down the line like we don't have any fiscal
One of
impact,
the-
but we
yes,
will have a
yes.
fiscal impact.
The
and
council
we'll-
directed me, but for purposes of just sustaining right now, we're absorbing it, and we'll get that in order. The council also directed that I bring back some form of what our increment of oversight will cost.
So can we put that thing in over here, like, because it sounds like we do not have a fiscal impact, zero. That sounds like not what we are talking about in reality.
Right now, we cannot because the council adopted a budget that did not include staff time or coverage. I would need to bring forward a budget amendment at the appropriate time once some analysis has been completed.
And we are talking about the TID budget?
The TID budget, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Davis, and then I'll go to the public.
I can make a motion? Oh, okay, thank you. I'd like to make the staff recommendation to appoint the Tourism TID Advisory Board, and second, to authorize the city manager with the approval authority to pay the TID invoices.
Motion second. Anyone in the public like to speak? Please come forward.
Okay. Go ahead, JP.
Getting the nod from the mayor, so I feel compelled to stand up and
I assume you sat there all night, you'd want to say something.
Right. Well, I just want to confirm that the Tourism Improvement District Advisory Board is in agreement with the staff recommendations, and that we are looking forward to getting going again.
Good.
If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer any of them.
Any questions from the council on Mr. Rollet?
Okay.
All right, thank you very much. Councilmember Davis, there's a motion and a second. Councilmember Chahal, did you have some further comments? Councilmember Chahal? No? Okay, all right. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please register your vote. Pay the bills. And that passes unanimously. Thank you, and thank you for coming.
Hi, Joe.
All right. Next is action on Vice Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Chaplain appointment for calendar year 2019. City Manager?
The City Council adopted a resolution number 6442, which establishes a procedure for selection of a mayor, vice mayor, as well as a chaplain. And based on that resolution, staff is to come forward in December of each year so that the council can consider the appropriate action as outlined. Based on that resolution, the Councilmember Mahan is the council member with the highest seniority in consecutive years on the council and who has not previously served as a vice mayor. That is a requirement in the resolution. And second is that the chaplain is the former vice mayor, and in this case it would be Vice Mayor Watanabe as the most recent outgoing vice mayor who would serve as the chaplain. So we recognize the unusualness in terms of the regular meeting being moved up before the council was placed, and want to recognize also that there are options for the council to depart from the resolution if it would like, and establish a different protocol or direct any changes, but we are required under the resolution to come forward in December and wanted to bring that conversation forward at this time.
Thank you. And I was going to recommend to the council that we actually change the resolution, because right now it has us that we are supposed to appoint the vice mayor and chaplain before the end of December. And I went back and looked at every election year, and it was always done in January, because you never know when the Register of Voters is going to certify the election. And we always wanted to do it with the new council as opposed to the old council, and also bring the committee assignments at the same time. So I'm recommending to the council that we change the resolution to say that we appoint the vice mayor. It's usually the mayor that makes a recommendation based on our policy, and city manager said who would be next in that. That we bring it, the change the resolution to say the vice mayor and the chaplain are appointed in the first regular council meeting in January of every year, and then they serve the entire year through the end of December, so that we're not caught up with the Register of Voters, and when we end up actually certifying the election, it seems like it's becoming later and later every year. So, so that's my recommendation, and then we bring it back January 15th. I'll write a memo like I normally do with the recommendation for the vice mayor. And so now it's just a matter of changing the resolution. So, council?
Can I make a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Councilmember Davis.
Yeah, going through the process myself in 2015, I didn't serve until January. So there is a problem when everything is certified with the ROV. So I guess my motion would be to continue the item with direction to bring back an amended resolution to have the action taken in January. So if we can move that forward, if somebody will second that motion for me.
Can we amend, can we take the resolution and appoint a vice mayor at the same meeting on the 15th?
Yeah.
City attorney, okay, great.
Or we can amend that resolution today.
I think we have to bring it back.
Bring it back.
Do we have to
Can
bring?
we appoint next? We can amend today. You could adopt an amended resolution today,
Okay.
but we'd have to carefully word it. It'd probably be better not to do that. It'd probably be better to give direction as to what the amendment is so we can be sure we have it right when you do adopt it.
I would like the right verbiage.
I've learned not to do it right on the dais.
It's very tricky to do. It's tricky to do it where we have to type it up as you're speaking.
That's why I want to continue it.
As long as I'll write a memo for the appointment for January, our first meeting in January.
We can work with you, Madam Mayor, to come up with the draft resolution, which will go in the normal course, and everyone will have ability to comment on it, and before it's adopted in January. And in that resolution, you can say, and we can adopt, and we can bring forward the recommendations and make the appointments the day of the resolution.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so that was a motion, and we have a second. Councilmember Hardy, is there any comments from the audience? Okay.
I was going to ask.
I'm sorry, Vice Mayor Watanabe.
Thank you. Do we need to get the Councilmember Mahan's, has she agreed to accept the position?
No, we do that in
Do
January.
in January? Okay, so you haven't kicked me out yet, okay? I just want to make sure.
No, we're kicking you out. Oh my gosh.
Thank you.
Okay, so a motion, a second for amending the resolution. Please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. Next, we have informational report on planning for the College Football Playoff National Championship at Levi Stadium on January 7th. And now we're Stadium Authority board members. Executive Director, do you have a report, or do we go straight to our stadium manager?
Our stadium manager, Jim Mercurio, is going to provide us an overview. I see both chiefs here, and we are able to respond to any questions on the city staff side. I do want to note, as I mentioned last time, as we've been invoicing the Bay Area Host Committee, we have been receiving timely payments as outlined in the agreement, and we are also going to be continuing with our multi-department focus for deployment, and some of the slides do cover neighborhood impacts that the stadium manager will be able to cover.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, good evening. My name is Jim Mercurio. Excuse me, Vice President of Stadium Operations and General Manager at Levi Stadium. Here to kind of talk a little bit about Again, just a quick overview of the college football playoff and how it really affects Santa Clara and how it affects Levi Stadium. I'll start with some of the overviews of where some of the items and some of the events that might take place here in Santa Clara. I mentioned some of these at the hotels in Santa Clara Convention Center. The team hotels will be at a few hotels here in the city for security purposes. We don't necessarily discuss and disclose where, but they are going to be here in the city. But there's a quick overview of some of the different areas that we would be using here in Santa Clara. In Santa Clara Convention Center, the team operations for both institutions will be housed there. The Credential Center pickup as well. And because of the size and scope of this event, the employee check-in, game day staff check-in, and public safety check-in and briefings will take place over there. We've done that on a couple of other occasions. The Levi Stadium ticketed security perimeter is outlined in the red line here that you see on the screen, and it's encompassing the Champ Tailgate Plaza, where anybody who has a game day ticket is allowed access into the championship tailgate plaza for a pregame party in there. Okay, I'll talk a little bit more about it, of some of the amenities that take place, but the main, one of the main ESPN broadcasts will take place in there. There's a little bit of a setup of a concert, pre-live music stage, kind of a concert with food and beverage, ESPN sets, general hospitality, and some sponsorship activations with the college football playoff. Just kind of gives you a little bit of what that area looks like. Those tents represent, different things from hospitality to food and beverage opportunities for people that are going to the game. Again, the only way you can get in there, though, is if you have a ticket to the game. So which is kind of a great thing. You're able to get people into that secured perimeter, and once they're inside, there's no in and out privileges. So that's a security tactic that has been employed in most cases, all large scale events now as a result of some of the security best practices that we employ. A little bit of a schedule that'll start taking place. We got a game on the 31st of December, and then so we'll move right into the build of a Tuesday, January 1st through the opening day, or for the events for CFP on that Monday. But this just gives you a little bit of an understanding of what might be taking place and when and where. The beauty shot is essentially just an area where media can go on a higher riser and just take what they call beauty shots of the stadium and the facade of the building of the stadium and watch and give some media reports of how things are going for the CFP and the game. Again, some future host walkthroughs and a welcome reception on Friday at some of the team hotels. Again, all focused on Santa Clara. A game day schedule, different than that of the Super Bowl, right? Where we actually close down Tasman for almost a week. That won't happen here. It'll be more in line with every other large-scale event that's above 25,000 people. We'll start closing down Tasman Drive at 1:30 in the morning, which is absolutely consistent with all of the 49er games or soccer events or concerts that we have, so that we can then turn that back as quickly as we can in the morning of the next morning, so that commute traffic is unimpacted. But this gives you just a few of the key points of some of the things and the activities. Kickoff is scheduled at 5:17. Yes, 5:17, not 5 o'clock, not 5:15, but 5:17, all based on TV ratings. Some of the things that in these types of events, when you have a lot of one-time or first-time guests coming to the facility or even to the city, it's important that you have great guest outreach. I put some opportunities here, some examples of some of the things that we do to communicate to folks. The CFP will rely on them heavily as well, because they have a direct line of communication with their season ticket holders. Each school receives about 20,000 tickets each, so they'll have direct communication with all of their season ticket holders and their folks. So we feel real confident about being able to get those and important information to those folks. What it feels like to be here at Levi Stadium, how to get here, whether it's using VTA, whether it's using different types of media opportunities to explain policies and procedures, rules and regulations of the stadium, things of that nature. And I just put a few of these types of advisories that we sent out for normal or other large-scale events that we take place at the stadium. Here are some of the things that CFP has put out and the Bay Area Host Committee has also done with respect to the different social media platforms that we'll utilize to communicate to folks. VTA has been a strong partner from the beginning of trying to make sure that we utilize as much of a modal split as we can, as has our team and friends from Caltrain and Capital Corridor. But VTA will be the primary folks from a public transit situation or standard that we would anticipate utilizing, similar to that of what we did at the NHL event that we took place, or WWE, for example. So we're prepared and working greatly with those folks. One of the things that the city manager has asked us to look at is additional information that we might be able to push out to folks with respect to better communication or ongoing communication. And we started that as early as a couple other games ago after some meetings that we took place in November, and we will employ these, and some of those are listed here as well. But flyers on vehicles in yellow lot, for example, just informing them, hey, those lots aren't going to be available at that time if you're traveling or leaving your car over for the weekend or something to that nature. Please be advised that it won't be available on that day, so we'll be able to communicate with them early. Rideshare maps for drivers and game day guides at hotels and websites in San Jose, because there's Thursday or Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There's a lot of events that'll be taking place in San Jose. We'll be able to communicate with those folks who are then coming to us and to our facility on Monday. Will be pretty robust. With respect to the neighborhood protection, additional staffing at intersections has been discussed and will be planned for. We started putting additional changeable message boards on Lafayette Street, which I think have been quite successful. We're still looking to see if there's any other kind of approaches that we can take. Additional distribution of rideshare companies on the drop-off and pickup. As we know, there have been some complaints from people on Lafayette. We have a rideshare lot. The police department has been very helpful in ticketing those folks, and now the changeable messages that we're putting there is actually informing drivers, if you try to do this, you'll be ticketed. A lot of times they don't find out until they get the ticket in the mail. So we're being a little bit more proactive in advising them ahead of time, hey, don't do this, this is where you're supposed to go. And we'll look at the routes that we ask them to take to get to certain lots as well, which we think will be certainly much more helpful. And then we also, we talk about geofencing, pickup and post-event destinations outside of the residential area, so it doesn't affect those folks. So some of the signage that we've been able to do, I've had some great conversations with some of the community out there. I have a gentleman that's kind of one of the watchdog who gives me a call every now and again and gives us real good feedback of how it would be helpful to communicate, and we've taken his advice as well, and it seems to be helping. We'll continue to do that, not just for the CFP, but for every other large-scale event that we take place. A little bit of an outdated, because it was yesterday, but we had the final four teams, Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Oklahoma. Thank you very much. Are you rooting for Oklahoma, maybe? I don't know. So we had the four schools, which is standard for the CFP. They required to come to the host facility, and the CFP ran a really good day of events, explaining all of the different things associated with CFP, what to expect, what the routes would look like, where your locker rooms are going to be, where the entire facility, and they did walkthroughs of the entire facility. So that was a very good, productive meeting yesterday that took place. The Cotton Bowl and the Orange Bowl will take place on December 29th. So we'll know the winners of those two events will now then go on to the championship game for us on January 7th. I did want to mention, and if you have any questions, we did meet yesterday, and the CFP really wanted to say thank you very much for your support on the signage package or the signage ordinance. They were concerned that there would be some kind of guerrilla marketing, so to speak, and really took note of the fact that you recognized the value of that partnership. And so I wanted to, on their behalf and certainly on ours, thank you very much for passing that a good month ago or so when you guys did that. So I'll leave it at that. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Authority Member Davis.
Jim, what is the how many people are you anticipating in this game?
70,000 people, just like you would see for a large scale
70,000
capacity.
people.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, what's the other thing? Oh.
In other words, sold out. It's a sold out. It'll be a sold out event.
Sold out?
Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing you did kind of bring it up was the Uber thing. We have a lot of problems with that on Lafayette. A lot. So where is this pickup and drop off going to be?
So it's called Red Lot 7, and it is off of Great America Parkway, about maybe a half a mile north of the stadium. And I'm trying to remember the name of the business that might be easier for you. I can happily go, I can send you an email and show you exactly where it is, or I can go to the city manager's office if you want. But it's the standard
The Irvine
red
property?
What is it?
The Irvine property?
Yes, Red Lot 7, and that's we've had that in place for a good 2 years now, 3 years, yeah.
And you were talking about signage, so you are definitely putting it up there so they know to go there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And we're actually doing it on the actual mobile app. We're trying to get those folks to understand where that is. And the changeable messages for the fans who are calling, we're actually hitting that hard inside the stadium and as they're leaving the stadium. If you're looking for rideshare, this is how you go, and giving them information on how to get there.
Okay, so based on the teams coming from out of state, most likely.
Yeah.
How are we going to communicate to these schools or, the hotels and the transit and what, I mean, they're coming into our city and they don't know anything about our city. I mean, how is that communication going with them right now? Because I know that's going to be a big issue.
So the meeting we had yesterday with the 4 different schools, so we know who they are, we gave them, and the CFP has given them.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the families. I mean, the players are one thing, the families are the other. So.
No, understood.
Okay.
So each of those schools, so there'll be 2 schools that come.
Right.
Once we determine who those schools are, then those teams, the CFP and our teams in the Bay Area Host Committee, will blast out the communication to those folks that they know they're giving those tickets to or have orders for those tickets and communicating where they're at. So all of the hotels that are in place will have ambassadors in the hotels, for example. All of the staff in the hotels will be able to communicate to them when they check in. Here is what you need to know, everything you need to know about college football and Levi Stadium.
Okay, I was just curious because sometimes when we go to conferences, they have shuttles set up, signage of the airports, go this way, this direction. It just makes it easier for people that come to visit us.
You'll see that in primarily San Jose Airport than you would San Francisco, but there'll be some coverage down there too. The Bay Area Host Committee will have volunteers welcoming and people to our region and making sure that everybody that comes out here, it's a big deal, so people have a good time. So I feel pretty good about it, honestly, with respect to the outreach and the partnership with CFP, who really takes on a lot of that responsibility. And then what we'll do is, if we just, from a social media standpoint, we'll retweet, for example, a message from CFP to their fans. So they have a huge following, have a very good, robust communication package. I think we're in pretty good shape. I feel comfortable.
Okay, because we'll yell at you if this doesn't work out good.
I understand.
Okay, just letting you know.
We care too, for sure.
Authority Member Hardy.
To get up to speed, I was trying to make certain I was clear as to what your title is, what your duties are, because that'll depend on the couple of questions. Sure. Are you just doing this event, or do you do special events for the stadium?
I'm sorry, we haven't met yet. I'm the Vice President of Stadium Operations.
Okay.
And the General Manager of Levi Stadium, and I wear 2 hats, essentially. I'm ultimately responsible for all of the events that take place in Levi Stadium.
Good, then you get all my questions.
Okay. That's a hook, line, and seeker, I think, maybe.
Well, I will, for context, I think it's hilarious. It's because Brigham Young University won in 1984 when I was there, and there was complaints that even though they had the perfect season, they hadn't played everybody, so that's why this is occurring for history.
That is, yes.
Yes, and I was there when Steve Young was there, the whole business. Okay. So, oh yeah. So here's my point. We were just going over this new Santa Clara place, and I know that you block off Tasman. Do we have, down the road, do we have some kind of a plan for residents and businesses and that? Because you talk about a perimeter.
Yes.
So I'll just leave that out there. But my complaint has been the bike trail being cut off. Now, I understand you have a perimeter for this and you have other events, and that makes sense. But we have asked for the bike trail to be open to people who have tickets because we have bike parking there. And also, do we have some way for people that use the trail, do you have the alternative route in place?
So we do similar, so just like we would do for a 49er game or a non-NFL game, save for monster truck, for example, if we were bringing trucks back and forth and there's a pit in the main parking lot, all of those other events take into consideration the bike trail and how we close it and open it as it relates to our parking hours. And we do have those areas on both sides, on the north and south, staff for folks when it is time that people are allowed in the stadium with tickets to be able to use that into the facility, yeah.
So the question is, when you have events that do not necessarily have anything outside of the stadium that it needs tickets, why are we stopping the bike riders?
So as it relates to, are you saying when we don't have an event?
When you have an event, but it is not an event where there are ticketed events outside in the parking lot. I wanted to know why, because I personally have been diverted.
So if I understand your question, I think...
Why are we not allowing the bikes to go through when there is no event where there are ticketed items going on in the parking lots?
Board member, I wanted, this is a presentation about the college football playoff national championship, not on the bike trail. The bike trail is a matter that is of interest to the public. A separate session on this so that it's duly noticed and the public knows when the bike trail will be discussed is probably in order. I do want to mention, though, that this has been an item that we have, while we've had to prioritize other items that we are working on with respect to the Stadium Authority, this has been an item that is on next year's work plan. And so I recognize that there's a lot of interest, but our presentation this evening is on the college football playoff, and we will be bringing forward a work plan in terms of how we will address this matter.
I just want to say quickly to Authority Member Hardy that we have made it a priority for the Creek Trail opening and the community room the beginning of next year is a priority for us.
And I'll make a comment then. I did see someone just this week stop in the middle of Lafayette and drop off. So, and it was just to get to the train station. So I can imagine there is a big issue, and I would say more signage and more police officers there. It was awful.
Yeah, I would say, just to comment to that, I mean, I don't know that there's any signage there on a non-event day. So if that, that might be something from a
And why do you call it a red light drop-off? I find that unfortunate.
No, ma'am, it's called red lot, L-O-T.
Okay.
It's just a color.
I thought you said light, and I went,
No.
Oh, dear. Yeah, that was what was worrying me.
Oh, man.
I made a note going, red light. Okay, lot. Thank you. Yeah, that would be bad. Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Watanabe.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Mercurio, for the presentation.
You bet.
A couple of things. If we could go back to slide number 6. Is it 6? Yes, 6. Okay.
Okay?
And you have, it looks like this is going to be the tailgate section. And are those the magnetometers all the way in the back there?
So the very top are the canopies where the magnetometers are now. If you went from left to right, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, and 3 will be used as the entrance. 4, 5, and 6 will be moved to the furthest west opening of tailgate, and that's where those mags will be lined up as an entrance to get to and through the tailgate. So essentially, magnetometers for 4, 5, and 6.
Okay. Oh, so will you still have sufficient amount of magnetometers then for people to go into the stadium, or it'll just be a more
Yes, ma'am.
narrower
In fact,
entrance?
I think it's probably more magnetometers than they've ever experienced because of the experience that I had in Atlanta, and our own city manager had in Atlanta, and assistant city manager had in Atlanta. We don't want to have that experience, and so the amount of magnetometers are far greater than what we've seen in previous.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the fact that this is going to be like the tailgate section, is that where it's located? Is that taking away parking space?
It is.
It is, okay.
It takes, I don't know that I have the number of spots that we're taking there, but it does, the calculations that we've done doesn't impact the amount of parking spaces that we think we have or need to accommodate.
Yeah,
those
that's why I'm asking
Yeah,
that, because if
I
you're
figured that.
talking about 70,000 people, and I mean, that could be quite a number. Where are those people going to park now? And I'm just anticipating they're going to park in the neighborhoods.
Actually, they won't.
They'll try.
Well, and they certainly
Like they
may.
always do.
But I think with the efforts of M-Park, Landmark, and certainly with the Santa Clara Police Department, I feel pretty good about the plan to ensure.
Well, I had an earful from a resident, and maybe the resident that you hear from as well, after one of the last events where Landmark was basically laying down on the job literally and figuratively, and letting cars through, and this person was very, very upset, and I got to hear all about it. So
I'd be happy to, if it's not, I'd be happy to talk with that particular individual too.
Well, we need to talk to Landmark.
Well, no, for sure, but I think I do want to make it clear though, these are public streets, right? And so I don't know that we have. I can't forbid somebody to go down those lots or those streets. I don't have the authority to do that. But last thing I want to hear is somebody laying down at the job. So
yeah,
we'll certainly
looking at their
look for that,
iPhones.
for sure.
Yes.
Thanks a bunch.
Okay. Thank you.
So I just wanted to talk about that because Vice Mayor Watanabe, Vice Chair Watanabe, and I went out during a last Monday night football game, and we looked, and we went right when the game started, which was, I don't know, 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or whatever, the Raider game. And so we went out, and right when the game started, we didn't see a single Landmark person or police officer in front of any of the streets protecting the neighborhoods. There was some cones there, but there was nobody there. So people were coming and parking all over the neighborhoods, all over the north side. They apparently don't want to pay the money to park in the lot, so they park all over the streets. And I can attest, and I can probably bring in campaign material to give you a copy to remind you of all the promises that were made that there would be no stadium parking in the neighborhoods. But the neighborhoods are just chock full of parking from the stadium. So I know this game is on a Monday night at 5 o'clock, and it's going to be right when people are coming home from work and other things. And, you know, we ask a lot of our neighbors on the north side because of the stadium. We made a lot of promises. The team made a lot of promises to them, and they have such an impact in their neighborhoods because of the parking. And then when people come back after the games, many are drunk, and that's when all the problems start. So You say that there'll be people there, there'll be, police officers, security people on the corners, but we have yet to see any of that, and all the cars are parked in the neighborhoods. So what kind of assurances are you going to make to us that our neighborhoods are going to be protected? Because these are neighborhood streets, and there's not supposed to be any stadium parking on those streets, but yet it's inundated with cars. So what's going to be the difference between this game and any other football game that's happening on the north side? And what kind of assurances can we give our north side residents that that won't happen?
Well, I can give you the assurances that I'll work diligently with the police department for sure. I'll certainly work with Landmark and other parking companies that we have out there, tasked at trying to identify if folks who are coming to the game understand and know where to park. Again, I don't have the authority to not allow somebody down a public street, but I guess what I can do is I can take additional video, I can go out and have additional people, I can take stills, I can assure that our folks are there and certainly staying through the time so we don't have people, as you have witnessed or suggested, that weren't there. Certainly work with the chief and his staff to make sure that the police are there or making additional roving patrols for that game. I hear you. I'm standing in front of you wanting to solve a solution, trying to find a solution to solve an issue and a problem. I think we've made some headway. Clearly, you witnessed something and you have witnessed something on that particular game.
And that was after all our complaints. We complained a lot. We were assured this was going to happen. We stayed almost an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, no one in sight.
Okay.
No one in sight. So I don't know what headway's been made. I don't think any headway's been made. And this is where all of our problems start with our neighbors.
Okay, so
I
guess what I'll do is I'll try to get as much proof to show you that the people are there. And then the next piece is how effective are they going to be there? I will tell you the commitment's there for me. I hear your complaints, and I'll do what I can to somehow prove to you that these folks are in place.
Well, they weren't there. So all I'm saying is how, excuse me for a second, please. When you made the promises that there would be no parking in the neighborhoods, what did you intend to do when you originally made those promises that there were going to be no parking in the neighborhoods?
Well, so all I can do is tell you moving forward, Mayor, that the commitment still resides, that we're trying to do everything we can to lessen the impact to the community and the folks on that side. I will do everything I can to show you additional proof of staffing that is there and try to make it as effective as possible.
Isn't there, and I think there's a game this Sunday, so we can start there. I think there is a game. Is there a game this Sunday?
There is a game this
Very
week
good.
too, and
We'll start
and maybe I can show you some additional proof there and show you that and forward it on to your folks. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Because again, this is going to be probably things that we're going to have actually people in seats. The whole stadium's probably going to be filled. So I imagine, although many people will be flying here, there's going to be a lot of parking situations. So have you presented our staff with a parking plan for this game?
We have.
Okay.
And we're continually working with staff to see the plan for that like we do each and every game. And we'll continue to do that for this game on Sunday.
Mayor, I just think it's very interesting that they were able to come up with an ordinance to solve their marketing problem with the signage and things like that. We have never received any proposals for any kind of ordinance, either for temporary usage or temporary parking or anything like that. So, I understand that Mr. Mercurio doesn't have authority, but if the public safety plan and the traffic plan for the stadium require that no parking take place on the street, I think that they should put their minds to figuring out how to deal with that. I recall, Mr. Mercurio, please don't interrupt me.
Please let our city
Please don't
attorney
interrupt
talk.
me, Mr. Mercurio.
I'm sorry, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I recall in former days when the Earthquakes played at Buckshaw Stadium, there were signs saying, on these days, you can't park here along El Camino or, the Alameda there. And so, I think there may be solutions that if Mr. Mercurio wants to work with the police department and our transportation department, they could come up with proposals for dealing with parking and entry into the streets.
So I think we need to put this on our work plan for January and then come up with penalties if this continues, because it doesn't seem to be a lot of attention placed on this. And I think parking is, as we develop property out there, is going to become even a larger issue for us and that stadium. And we have to make sure the parking's secured and it's not on the backs of our north side neighborhoods. So Vice Chair?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, I was going to suggest the same thing, to add this to the work plan, because there is, I mean, it's not just the neighborhoods, right off of Lafayette, Lick Mill Boulevard, and granted, there's a portion of Lick Mill from Tasman down to Hope where it says, no parking on these days, but then if you go past Hope Drive all the way up to Montague, then there's residential, there are people that anticipate being able to come home from work on a Monday night and find their parking spot on the street, and it's gone. And granted, it's public parking, but at the same time, these people, they're used to coming home and finding their parking spot there. And after actually was at the Raiders game, the mayor and I drove up and down Lake Mill, and I showed her, this is the parking situation. And then at 11 o'clock that night, I went back, I walked down, and I took pictures just to show all the empty spaces, because all those spaces have been taken up by people attending the game. And I have actually brought it up in the past and talked to the chief about putting up signs that say no event parking, permit only, violators bill will be towed. I mean, and that's it, just no event parking, and people will understand that message, just so as that it still provides the neighborhoods the ability to park in their neighborhood. And if we can add that to the work plan, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, any member of the public like to say anything? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Did you have something to say? Is this just a note and file? Okay, is there a motion to note and file? Motion second, note and file. Please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, the next item we have is action on the Santa Clara Stadium Authority financial status report for quarter ending September 30th, 2018.
Good evening.
Good
I'll
evening.
go fast. I know we're all wearing
down.
down.
No, we might have some questions on this, so go ahead.
Okay. So tonight I'm presenting to you the financial status report for the quarter ending September 30th, 2018. I'll be discussing the NFL events, non-NFL events. On the operating budget status, we'll briefly talk about the SBLs, the discretionary fund, debt schedule, and the capital improvement program. There were 3 NFL events held in 2018-19 as of September 30th. A total of 190,840 tickets were sold, and the Stadium Authority received $1.7 million in the NFL ticket surcharge revenue, which is based on the 10% of ticket sales to NFL events. The City of Santa Clara also received $67,000 in senior and youth fees, which is based on the 35 cents per ticket to NFL events. For NFL event parking, a total of 15,030 cars were parked in off-site parking lots, generating $85,000 in off-site parking fees, and a total of 1,244 cars were parked in the Tasman lots, generating $6,000 in parking fees for the general fund. And here you can see the graph and see the amount of cars parked for each game. For the NFL event, public safety costs totaled $741,000, and $594,000 or 80% of that is direct city costs. $147,000 or 20% is outside agencies, and $85,000, or $85,000 was covered by the off-site parking fee. For non-NFL events, we had 7 ticketed non-NFL events. A total of 231,849 tickets were sold, and the Stadium Authority received $927,000 in non-NFL ticket surcharge revenue, which is based on the $4 per ticket sold to all non-NFL events. One half of that is what goes into the discretionary fund, and the other half goes into the stadium operations. A total of 41 non-ticketed or special events was held with 15,943 attendees. For the parking on the non-NFL events, a total of 22,338 cars were parked in off-site parking lots, generating $124,000. And public safety costs amounted to $1.3 million, with 1.1 or 84% being city direct costs, and 214,000 or 16% as outside agencies costs, and 124,000 of that was covered from the off-site parking fee. And just on this graph, you can kind of even tell which events were smaller just from the graph. You can see that the high school football games, and then the special events, which are, when we say non-ticketed or special events, that's holiday parties, birthday parties, corporate events. For the operating budget status, operating revenues equaled $26 million, or 20% of the annual budget, and operating expenses equaled $19.8 million, or 15% of the annual budget. And the reason these are lower is because we budget this was actually the first year that we budgeted the gross amount for the non-NFL event revenues and expenses, and we don't receive that until the end of the year. For the stadium builder license, or SBLs, the value of the currently active SBLs is $531.3 million, and that is, let's see, 91.3% of the total sellable SBLs. A total of 80% of principal value has been collected as of September 30th, which is $425.4 million, and then 504 new SBLs were sold with a total value of $3.2 million. We also had SBL relocations, and that's when someone may want to trade in their current SBL for a different seat. So they netted 206 more SBLs, and it was an increase of $1.2 million in SBL face value. Defaulted SBLs amounted to 1,001 with a value of $6.1 million. And as we've said before, defaulted SBLs have either been resold or are available for resale at full price. 20 million life to date has been collected for SBL holders, or for defaulted SBL holders. And what that means is if they default, we keep the money. They do not get what they paid on there. So that's amounted to $20 million. And then those SBLs are then resold. The discretionary fund has a current balance of $1.7 million. You can see there's a small amount of expenses, $48,000. That's for consulting services in 18-19. There were no public safety costs paid in 17-18 or 18-19. The discretionary fund previously used it to pay these public safety costs for the first 3 years. And then I just wanted to make a note, based on the chair, or is it the board chair, the mayor, whatever title. We moved the expenses to the we moved the expenses to the accrual base so you could see it better, because before it was off kilter, so we wanted to make it more visible. For the debt schedule, the total outstanding debt as of September 30th was $364.5 million, and this is a reduction of $18.2 million from March 2018. And this is a slide I always show this chart. I like to show it because it shows you how fast we're paying the debt down. So when you see the high in March 2014 of $653.4 million, and now we're at $364.5, which is a decrease of $288.9 million from March 2014. So we're doing a really good job about paying the debt down. For the capital improvement program, the total CIP budget is $8 million. $6.4 million is appropriated for stadium CIP costs, and $935,000 has been spent to date on various projects. And 1.6 million is budgeted for work that is to address items covered by a warranty, and so far this year, we've paid $34,000 on those. So we're recommending that this report be noted and filed for the Santa Clara Stadium Authority Financial Status Report for the quarter ending September 30th. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question, but go ahead, Authority Member Davis.
Angie, quick one. For the NFL events, the parking costs, okay, so 85,000, was that divided by those 3 games? The $85,000, was that for all 3 of those games?
Yes, it was a combination.
It was a combination?
Of the 3.
Okay, because when I divided it out, it came to 472 cars at $60 a car, because they're charging $60 for parking. So they're only parking 472 cars per game?
It looks like the second, if you look, it's different. You can tell the Lions game was probably a bigger, so it's not an even. You can tell the parking.
I'm just going by average.
Yeah. So it just depends. I mean, I don't know. Some lots don't charge. They don't all charge $60. I don't think. Some of the outlier lots, they all charge.
We only get a small portion of the $60. It's like $5.
Oh, we don't get
It's
all the parking?
The $5 fee.
$5.
We get
We get all the parking. Bummer. Okay.
And it is subject to additional study. That is a fee
So
that we're
we
going
only
to be
get,
studying.
so they're charging 60,
Right.
we get 5.
Sorry, yes.
Okay, and the only reason I asked that is because that's why they're parking in the neighborhoods, because it's $60 a car.
Yeah.
And that's a problem. I mean, if we, and I know we're only getting $5, but if they could lower those costs, or, I mean, it's like they're not gonna do it, but, you know, that is a byproduct of them parking in the neighborhoods because it's so expensive. And I don't know how to, figure this out, but, okay. That was just my question. I was just going by general numbers. So I just wanted to know.
No, it was a good question.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question.
I have a question. There was a lot of new seats built at the stadium. They're all on the field. I don't know how many there are. Are we getting seat builder licenses from those new seats that have been installed at the stadium?
No, I've been told that those are temporary, so we have not received SBLs.
Temporary?
We heard they were permanent.
On the ground?
Yeah.
I believe that's what they've told us, but I'll check on that and get back to you on it just to verify. I want to make sure I'm giving you correct information.
Temporary means you put them up and take them down after each.
But they sold them for $50,000. So that's why I was wondering.
Yeah, let me check, because I don't want to give you incorrect.
Get back to us on that, because I believe we're
answer
due
through the
some
blog.
seat license money on that to pay down the debt. Thank you. Any other council member, authority members, questions? Authority member O'Neill?
Well, I'll just make some comments. Like one thing, I'm really glad to see that, and I guess it was my mistake that I didn't realize at the beginning about some of the things that were going to go on with the discretionary fund, but I really like the last couple of years, we haven't been using it, as a backstop for, some of the other public safety costs, and that we're finally, pursuing getting, I was never in favor of the idea of a cap, but that we're working on that. And as I told Angie, I sent Angie a number of questions, but every time, every quarter when we get a report, there's, additional or new information. So one of the things I was just going to point out, that I won't go through all the questions that I asked her, but I thought that was kind of interesting. Something that I didn't realize before, and it was here in her report on page 19, it was about the possessory interest property tax. And I never remember hearing this before, that it's, in accordance with state law, Stadco must pay possessory interest property tax based on their lease of Levi Stadium Authority from the state, from the Stadium Authority. This revenue is collected by the county and placed into the Redevelopment Property Tax Trust Fund. Amounts remaining in the RPTTF after paying any enforceable obligations and successor agencies are distributed, blah, 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 percentage 10%. And one of the, because I asked her, I said, well, wait, but the land under the stadium was owned by the city. It wasn't an RDA property. And so Angie said that whole area, because it was a redevelopment area, any of the tax revenues have to go into this trust fund, which was something I had never even heard before.
Yes, so that's correct. So it's still the RDA our former RDA area. Once we close the successor agency with the properties that we have remaining sold, then that will dissolve that. So until that's all done, we still have the successor agency, so we still have the RDA area.
So all of the, say, like, Santa Clara Unified, the county,
I'm not
College
sure
District,
how
all of
big
us.
the area is. Ruth might know more.
I mean, so like,
about-
because everybody's, the piece of the, like, so we get 10%, the school district gets like 38%, the county gets like
Correct,
20.
you're right.
So do we have any idea how much money maybe is in there? Are we
Oh,
expect-
no, we get it. It just flows back to us through that. So it all funnels into that. And then, like, the city doesn't get the full amount that they're paying. We only get that portion of it because it passes
I thought
through.
maybe it was being held in abeyance
No,
until
I'm sorry.
everything was done.
No, it flows through what they call the trust, but then they pay it to all those agencies, like you were just mentioning. We get 10%, then the school district gets a certain amount. The county general fund gets a certain amount. So there's percentages that it just kind of funnels through.
Oh, okay.
And we're still paid even though they're appealing that with the county. They're appealing
They're still,
their
yes,
taxes.
they have paid it.
So we
But
get paid.
But it's under appeal, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions on the report?
I do.
Yes. Vice Chair Watanabe.
Thank you. Angie, I was hoping the information was in this report, but it's not. But however, I'm just going to throw something out to you because it regards the second quarter stadium financials. And I can't take credit for this because it was a resident that reached out to me regarding it. For the Taylor Swift concert, 2 nights, was Friday and Saturday night. For, it looks like probably it was Friday night, 29.3 thousand tickets were sold, and the public safety costs were $239,000. Saturday night, there were 50,500 tickets sold, and the public safety costs were $234,700. So that's a discrepancy. There's a little bit of a discrepancy there. I mean, because there were almost twice as many people that went to the game on Saturday night, yet this public safety costs were cheaper than they were on Friday night. Is there any way that we can look into that, or do you have an answer for that?
I do have an answer. I don't know if it's the answer that you will like, but so when they first had Taylor Swift, the Saturday game was the one that was advertised. They had an overwhelming people, the tickets sold out quickly, so they decided to add the Friday. The tickets didn't sell as well on Friday. So I believe from what I've heard is there were tickets. So even though it says tickets, we received this was tickets sold, there were tickets, attendance was full. So there were tickets that were given away.
I see, okay. So that 29,300 is not reflective of how many people were actually there?
Correct. It was not attendance, it was just tickets sold, and we don't know what the actual attendance.
Okay, thank you.
Do we know how many tickets were given away? Because we're paying all the costs for this.
I'm asking the same, I'm
Is this the
hearing
first
about
time
this
you've heard
right
this?
now, yes, and I'm
Okay.
asking
Could
about
you please look
whether
into
we
that?
collect
Because that
funds.
skews all the
Right.
numbers
Whether
for
we
us.
collect
There
funds
goes
for
our
tickets they give
surcharges.
away.
And that's our surcharge, that's everything. Yeah, that's disturbing.
That's what we
Okay.
need to look up as
Thank you.
I mean, they could have put them on Gold Star and at least got half price for them.
That's a non-NFL event. That's our event.
Well, and if you look at the annual report that was issued 2 weeks ago, the agreement requires that within 45 days, this executive director receives a financial report. And we have not been able to obtain those financial reports. So these are issues and answers that we would have been able to provide you had we received those reports that we have already
And that are required
requested.
by the management agreement.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for bringing that up. Any other questions? All right. Is this a note and file as well?
Motion to note and file.
Oh. What's that?
It's approved or note and file?
financial report.
Okay, is there a motion to approve this
Okay,
report?
I'll make the motion to approve it, but it says under recommendation, not in file. So, you want us to approve it? Okay. Motion to
Acceptance, how about we accept it?
approve. Yeah.
And the second, is there any member of the audience that would like to speak on this issue? All two of you, three of you? Okay, seeing no one, we have a motion and a second to accept the report. Please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. Next, we have reports of members and special committees.
Oh, I have.
Councilmember Davis.
I don't have my water guy here. Gary went home. I just wanted to bring to everyone's attention, I attended the EOC meeting, which is the Operation Center, and they've been forecasting an El Nino for this coming winter. And along with that, they projected 2 Pineapple Expresses, which are those atmospheric rivers, in January. So we have available to all residents a system to get rain barrels. So I want to get you to the website to get your rain barrel and save the water. We were trying to save and be as much fiscally responsible, but let's conserve the water, people. So please go to the website. You can get all these rain barrels. There's a way of doing this, so please do this. Is that the water district or the city? The city has them. So I just think that it's a good idea, being that this rain system is coming, and let's gather up the water. So that's my request to all the residents in Santa Clara. Well, it's in January. They're predicting 2 in January. So, and we're in El Nino. Yes. So my
All right.
report.
Thank you. I have 2 issues. One's good news and one's not. So the first I have is that Wilcox High School won their Division 3A Northern California Regional Championship game last Saturday. I know Karen's a teacher there, Wilcox, so we're so excited about that. And so that means that they will be playing this Saturday at Wilcox High School at 6 o'clock for the Division 3A state championship. They play a team from Southern California, Kaiser High School, they're in Fontana. So they're playing the state football championship bowl game for the state championship, which has never, I don't think it's ever happened. So I'd like to see all of you out there, 6 o'clock p.m. on Saturday, and it's a home game, so it's really great. This is a phenomenal football team. They're so great. We'll invite them to the council, at the end of all this. So please wish them luck, because we're Santa Clara proud. All right, the next item I have on the not so good side is that this afternoon the city released, I have a statement. This afternoon the city released additional video related to an October 12th domestic violence call involving then 49er Reuben Foster. I've received multiple media calls today about the additional video that was just released, including being asked questions about a potential cover-up. I certainly hope that's not the case, but I think it's important for the public to know that our city will act transparently and honestly. So I would like the council to show by consensus support for a thorough investigation and review into this incident by the city attorney and the city manager's office and her team, wherever it may lead. The council should know, and the public should know, that we should know if there were any special treatment or cover-up. We have excellent officers in our police department who protect and serve Santa Clara well on a daily basis, and we need to feel confident that our police department handles all domestic violence cases fairly, regardless of the status of the individual or any organization that person may represent. So by consensus, if we give our city attorney and city manager, city council? All right, city manager, city attorney. And you can talk to the city manager's office in the event that any of you are contacted. Okay? So thank you, and I'm sorry to even have to say that. Is there any other council member that has any item they'd like to talk about?
I would like to thank the Parks and Rec Commission again for a outstanding tree lighting. I think this is the largest one we've ever had. Jim's not here. I think there was like 7,000 people. Yeah, there was a lot of people. We had a great time. The dancing was cool. They moved Santa over to the side. I like the new configuration, and it was a blast. And they extended the ice rink a little bit larger. And the mayor thinks that we all should go ice skating, but I don't want to fall on my butt. But anyway, so it was a great night, and the fireworks were exciting. It was everybody was thrilled about it to the part where some residents thought it was gunfire because they were a little surprised. But anyway,
It was really loud.
It was loud,
Really
but
loud.
it was gorgeous.
But for
and
5
it was
minutes.
a good night. It was a
5
good
minutes.
night. So I want to thank Jim Teixeira's staff and the commission because they did a heck of a job on this, and to Chuck Blair and to the Craigs? Is it the Craigs? Conleys. Craig Conley and his wife, yeah, for being our tree lighters this year. It was awesome, and we have a lot of good people in Santa Clara, so I want to thank them for being our honorees in the tree lighting.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, please.
So I was a docent Saturday at the Historic Home Tour, and it was a fun occasion. I got to work inside the house, a house that I've seen all my life, but have never been inside, and I got to hear some of the inside scoop from the neighbors about, I guess, the woman the house was 80 years old, and the current owners have lived there for a year, and they're only the third owner. So apparently the woman who owned the house for decades, even her neighbors were never like inside the house or never got beyond the living room and all that. So it was fun to see, the houses decorated and people had fun and having fun, and there were historic cars parked, and then they had kind of like the classic car cruise and all that. So it was another occasion of Santa Clara having kind of a fun time, celebrating our history, and I hope we can do some more work on the historic preservation index of homes and make sure we get as many houses on the list as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, city manager report.
I just have a couple of housekeeping announcements since next week is a ceremonial meeting. You should have received in your email today the January 13th packet for Thursday. We'll start at 9:30 here in the chambers. We're also, January 30th, I'm already on January 30th. December 13th. I'm thinking about all the packets. December 13th. The other is we're suspending the biweekly city manager's report this week. We'll issue it next week with more complete information. We'll take a break during the holidays and we'll begin reissuing on January 11th. Got my dates right. I also want to acknowledge that for December 20th, I'm likely going to work with Lynn to change the closed session start time to a later time to allow for meeting with the new council members for the same briefing that the seated council members have already received. So I'll work with Drew Lynn to schedule and send out new times so that we can provide a briefing on the closed session topics. And then last, just a reminder that we are on reduced staffing from December 24th through January 2nd. And so for the public, we'll begin to pass out information about any city public service needs or things of that sort to plan ahead because we will have reduced staffing during that time.
All right, thank you. And that leads us to our adjournment. And so I'm going to ask the council to please adjourn tonight's meeting in memory of the following two individuals. The first is Anne Mulcravey Holder, longtime Santa Clara business owner. Anne Mulcravey Holder was born in San Francisco on July 18, 1923, to Frank and Cecile Mulcravey. She met the love of her life, Jack Holder, in a train derailment in January 1952, and they were married in 1954. They moved to the Valley of Heart's Delight in 1957 and raised a family of 7 children. Ann and her husband own and operated Uncle John's Pancake House in Santa Clara, and then in 1967 founded Holder's Country Inn, which is now run by their children in various locations. They spent 41 years in marriage until his passing in 1996. Ann passed away peacefully at home with her family at her side on Thanksgiving Day. Ann is survived by her children, Jacqueline, Frank, John, Richard, Dan, Michael, and Robert, 12 grandchildren, 11 great-grandchildren, and many nieces, nephews, and cousins. So we'll ask that we adjourn in her memory. Also in the memory of Anthony John York, son of San Francisco 49er owner Denise DeBartolo York and John York. Anthony was born on August 3, 1983 in Youngstown, Ohio, and graduated from Cardinal Mooney High School, where he lettered in football and baseball. He went on to graduate from Tulane University in New Orleans, Louisiana. After he graduated, he founded CODA, a company that helped prepare young people for their first job after college. Anthony was also involved in philanthropy and supported the 49ers Foundation while working closely with incarcerated youth. Anthony passed away at the age of 35 on December 7, 2018. Anthony is survived by his parents, his brother Jed, sisters Jenna and Mara, and nephews Jackson and Brixton. So is there a motion to adjourn in both their memories? So moved. Second. There's a motion and a second. Please register your vote. And that passes unanimously. And meeting's adjourned. Thank you all for coming.